The goddess Linares once delivered a divine oracle, warning of a legacy of ruin, the demon dragon of the end. This ancient terror, having already laid waste to kingdoms of old at the world's edge, now increases its kin, threatening to erase humanity and all other nations from existence. Facing this legendary nightmare, a band of four stands united. Farina, the Sky Knight, leads the charge alongside Shiska, the High Priestess, the mysterious automaton Inju, and the nimble thief Mado, each recognizing the gravity of the foe before them. The beast itself towers over them, a mountain of scales and malice, known as the demon dragon of the end. Its roar shakes the very foundations of the earth as the party prepares for a battle that will decide the fate of their world. With a fierce cry, the Sky Knight lunges forward, her blade gleaming as she initiates the assault. The dragon responds with a crushing swipe of its claws, forcing the group to scatter and brace against the sheer force of the impact. Seeing the stalemate, the thief shouts for his companion to hold her position while he creates a necessary opening. He sprints across the shattered ground, his eyes locked on the massive creature as he maneuvers into a dangerous proximity. He knows that a single misstep in this dance with death will be his last, yet he presses on with grim determination. Behind him, the knight calls for the automaton's support, prompting the mechanical girl to begin her calculated magical bombardment. She unleashes a devastating volley of 6 magical light flashes, the projectiles streaking through the air to strike the dragon's thick hide. The explosions provide the distraction needed for the thief to move into his final position. He then executes a daring taunt, drawing the dragon's lethal gaze and a subsequent blast of energy directly toward himself. At the last possible second, he triggers an afterimage, leaving the beast to strike nothing but air while he prepares his next move. The priestess urgently calls for the thief to retreat, but he refuses, insisting she focus her divine protection entirely on the knight. He knows the limitations of his craft all too well. Once his specialized techniques are spent, he is left vulnerable for precious seconds, a barrier he has never been able to overcome despite rigorous training. As he leaps through the air, a fleeting wish for magical power crosses his mind, yet he pushes through the doubt, determined to play his part. Dodging the dragon's massive claws as they shatter the earth around him, he finds the perfect moment and roars for his allies to strike. In response, the priestess invokes a celestial blessing while the knight readies her blade to cleave the darkness, and the automaton prepares to expend every drop of her mana. The automaton unleashes a blinding barrage of magical light, a relentless rapid-fire assault that engulfs the beast in a searing white glow. Caught in the center of the magical storm, the dragon's gaze narrows as the sheer force of the impact begins to tear through its ancient scales. The massive creature reels back from the overwhelming power of the combined assault, its form obscured by debris and the lingering radiance of the priestess's support. The beast reels as the Sky Knight charges, her voice ringing out with a final, desperate cry that this strike will end the nightmare once and for all. Because of her momentum, the massive blade of light cleaves through the air, striking the creature's tail with a resounding crash that shatters the very ground beneath them. The impact sends the dragon crashing into the rubble, its massive form finally succumbing to the overwhelming force of the party's combined assault. As the dust begins to settle, the knight stands over the fallen monster, her breath coming in ragged gasps as the adrenaline of the life-or-death struggle begins to fade into exhaustion. Nearby, her companions watch in stunned silence until the thief's eyes widen in sudden, inexplicable alarm, sensing a shift in the atmosphere that the others have yet to notice. While the knight looks down at her blade, now embedded in the earth, a strange tension fills the air, replacing the brief moment of victory with a new, chilling uncertainty. In response to this unseen threat, the thief lunges forward with startling speed, activating a skill to snatch the sword from her hands before she can even process his movement. Moments later, he is enveloped in a swirling, dark miasma, his body contorting as he collapses to the ground, leaving his allies to scream his name in horror as the true cost of their victory is revealed. He lay broken as the priestess looked upon the fallen blade with dawning horror. She recognized the dark aura immediately. It was a death curse, a final, spiteful gift left by a high-ranking dragon in its dying moments. As the knight cradled him, he coughed violently, blood staining his lips. When she asked if he had known the danger, he weakly shook his head, whispering that this was something else entirely. In that split second, his thief survival instinct had screamed at him to flee from the impending doom. Yet for the first time in his life, he had ignored the impulse to save himself. Seeing his life force fading, the priestess urgently called for healing magic to be cast upon him. She knew time was running out as the dark miasma continued its work. The knight's tears fell onto his face as she gripped his hand, pleading to know why he would throw his life away for her. He looked up at her with a faint, tired smile, thinking that defying his selfish nature at the very end didn't feel so bad. She let out a choked sob, her heart breaking as she realized the depth of his sacrifice. She had never intended for their victory to come at such a devastating cost. As his consciousness began to fade, his mind drifted back to a time long before this battle, to the squalid back alleys where he had grown up. As a child with no magical talent, he had been forced to scavenge through trash just to survive in a world that had no place for him. Even then, he had been plagued by a persistent cough, while other orphans whispered that he was a lost cause without expensive medicine. In his fading consciousness, he called out for the only person who had ever cared for him, his sister, Mabel. He had once believed that his only purpose was to fade away quietly, a burden to no one, as he wandered deeper into the shadows of the woods. As the fever took hold, his strength failed, and he collapsed onto the cold earth, his vision blurring into darkness. Suddenly, a warm light broke through the gloom as a man reached down, his hand glowing with a restorative power that the boy had never seen before. This man, a wandering adventurer who lived a life of vice and virtue in equal measure, took the orphan under his wing, allowing him to witness a world beyond the slums. When the time came for the group to move on, the boy rushed forward, desperate to hold on to the first sense of belonging he had ever known. He looked up at his savior with wide, earnest eyes, asking how he could possibly become someone capable of saving others, just as he had been saved. The man paused, questioning why a child born without a drop of mana would seek the path of magic, a power that had been his salvation but remained out of his reach. He explained that while the gods decide one's fate and profession, perhaps a legendary sage could rewrite those rules, leaving the boy to ponder the nature of the divine and his own destiny. He feels the rough but kind hand of Gorin on his head, a comforting weight as the man reassures him that even without magic, there is a path forward for those who refuse to give up. Suddenly, the memory fades as a gentle voice calls his name, pulling him back from the depths of the past to find a radiant woman standing over him in a void of pure, blinding light. Looking up at the towering, ethereal figure, he asks the only question that matters in this strange, empty expanse. Who is she, and where has she brought him? She begins to speak of ancient legends, of a gate to paradise at the world's edge and the divine realm that lies beyond, asking if he has heard the tales of the demon dragon that guards the threshold. As she describes the beast, a vision of the massive creature blocking the path to the celestial gates appears, a barrier that has finally been breached, allowing the gods to reach out to the mortal realm once more. With a serene smile, she finally reveals her true nature, identifying herself as the goddess Linaris, leaving him breathless at the realization of the divine presence standing before him. She then turns her attention to his dire situation, explaining that the demon dragon left him with a lethal curse, and while she would typically guide his soul to the afterlife, she has granted him a temporary reprieve. Finally, she reveals that his companions have already pleaded for his life, and though their wishes for his resurrection were clear, she felt it necessary to speak with him personally before deciding his ultimate fate. She explains that their victory over the demon dragon has granted her the authority to intervene in the mortal realm once more. As a token of her gratitude for this feat, she prepares to offer him a monumental gift. A serene smile graces her features, radiating a divine warmth that fills the empty void. While she waits for his response, he stands frozen in disbelief as she declares her intent to grant him any single wish he desires. His mind reels as the weight of her words hits him like a physical blow, sending his thoughts racing toward the impossible prospect of returning to life. He clenches his fist tightly, struggling to process the sheer convenience of such a miracle and wondering if things could truly be this simple. Observing his intense reaction, she inquires if his struggle against the demon dragon was driven by this very desire for a second chance. She continues to gaze at him as he remains silent for a moment, a bead of sweat rolling down his face as he realizes his innermost thoughts are laid bare before her divine sight. He looks back at her with a hint of vulnerability, asking if she would be willing to listen to his true story without judgment or laughter. As he begins to explain, he reflects on his past as a thief who possessed not a shred of magic, a condition deemed utterly incompetent in a world where such power is everything. Despite being looked down upon by society, he clenches his fist in memory of the resolve that kept him moving forward. He declares his wish with a firm voice, stating his desire to become a sage so that he might finally wield the magic that has always eluded him. After his bold declaration, a heavy silence falls between them as he looks away, his hand trembling slightly with the weight of his own audacity. He begins to doubt himself, assuming his request is laughable and impossible. But she quickly interjects, assuring him that such a transformation is indeed within her power. She explains that while changing one's divine vocation is a privilege of the gods, it comes with a steep price. He would be reset to level 1, losing the mastery he had gained as a level 99 thief to start anew as a novice magic user. The reality of the trade-off sinks in, and he stares at her in stunned silence, weighing the loss of his hard-earned strength against the dream of finally touching the arcane. He realizes that as a level 1 novice, he would be restricted to the weakest regions of the world, effectively separating him from his powerful allies who remain at the peak of their abilities. He recalls his friends, the priestess, the automaton, and the knight, remembering their own duties and realizing that if he takes this path, he will be unable to walk beside them for a long time. When he asks if she can at least inform his friends of his choice, she remains cryptic, leaving him with the realization that he must claw his way back to power through sheer effort if he ever hopes to reunite with them. He listens as the goddess clarifies the nature of his new path. She explains that being a sage doesn't simply mean memorizing every offensive and defensive spell known to man. Instead, it involves acquiring magic that aligns perfectly with his own innate talents. Intrigued by this distinction, the young man asks what kind of magic would actually suit him. The goddess admits that because the situation is such a rare case, she cannot say for certain what his specific affinity will be. Despite the lingering uncertainty of what lies ahead, his expression hardens with a newfound sense of purpose. He is ready to embrace the unknown, regardless of the risks. Observing this shift in his demeanor, she notes that his resolve appears unshakable. With a graceful gesture, she summons a shimmering, ornate doorway into existence. She instructs him to step through the portal, marking the beginning of his transformation. As he approaches the threshold, she explains that by walking straight ahead, his vocation will shift and he will eventually emerge in a place that feels familiar to him. Before he departs, she offers a final, solemn word of gratitude, praising the hero who played a pivotal role in defeating the demon dragon Letitia. The unexpected tribute catches him off guard, leaving him momentarily stunned. A memory of his old companion, Gorin, flashes through his mind, recalling the priest's boisterous laughter and his advice about surprising the gods. With a faint, knowing smile, he steps forward, ready to do exactly that. He stands before the goddess, who watches him with a mix of solemnity and grace, urging him not to lower his head in her presence as he prepares for the journey ahead. He grips the hilt of his blade and steps forward into the blinding radiance of the portal, his resolve unshaken as he reflects on the long journey that led him to this pivotal moment. He feels the light begin to consume his form while her voice lingers in the air, a final blessing wishing him a path free of hesitation and the protection of the divine. The ethereal realm fades, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the sight of a familiar stone tower rising above a dense canopy of trees in the distance. The traveler stands alone in the quiet of the woods, now draped in a dark, hooded cloak, taking a steady breath as the local wildlife scatters at his sudden arrival. He gazes toward the horizon, recognizing the distant silhouette of the watchtower that guards Fortune, the renowned city of entertainment. He feels a sense of profound realization as he observes his surroundings, confirming that the transition is complete and he has indeed returned to the world he once knew. He suddenly hears a faint sound that catches his ear, causing him to startle and turn toward the nearby water's edge, his senses heightened in this new beginning. He pauses, examining his hands and the youthful reflection in a nearby pool, wondering if he has actually grown younger. Looking around the clearing, he searches for his original equipment, only to spot a small, pyramidal storage crystal lying on the grass. This sight triggers a memory of his former companions, where he once apologized for his inability to use magic, forcing him to rely on their strength. They had accepted his limitations then, but the world had changed. Returning his focus to the crystal in his palm, he reasons that if his class has truly shifted to one capable of wielding magic, he should finally be able to activate it himself. With a deep breath and a focused plea, he commands the object to open, and the crystal responds, emitting a soft, rhythmic hum as it begins to glow. As the light intensifies, a list of high-level legendary gear manifests before him, and he is suddenly overcome by a sensation of flowing energy, a raw, magical power he has never experienced in all his years. Overjoyed by the confirmation of his new reality, he throws his arms up and lets out a triumphant shout that echoes through the quiet woods, a wide smile breaking across his face. Eager to test his strength, he summons a familiar dagger from the storage, but as he attempts to give it a practiced flourish, his movements are uncharacteristically stiff and awkward. He stares at the blade, stunned by how heavy and unwieldy it feels in his grip. Despite it being a weapon he once mastered, the physical rejection confirms the truth. He is no longer a thief. He stood alone in the quiet forest, deciding it was best to seal away his old thief gear. Trying to use equipment he no longer mastered would only lead to clumsy mistakes in a real fight. The young man wondered if he truly had become a sage, realizing he needed to test his current capabilities. Steeling his resolve, he began an incantation, calling upon the flames to strike down an imaginary foe. With a sharp cry of fireball, he thrust his hand forward, pouring his will into the spell. However, the only response was the rustle of leaves and a heavy silence as his magic failed to manifest. He stared at his empty palm, certain he hadn't misspoken the words. He had heard that even a novice sage should be able to cast such a basic spell. Desperate, he cycled through every spell he knew, shouting for ice lances, thunderbolts, and even a simple light. But the air remained still. The weight of the failure brought him to his knees, his mind racing with confusion as to why his power remained locked away. In that moment of despair, the words of the goddess Linaris echoed in his mind, reminding him that a sage's path is unique. They do not simply learn common spells. Their magic is a reflection of their own innate, hidden talents. He suddenly has a realization, his eyes widening as a possibility strikes him. Could this be the key he was missing? Reflecting on his past, he considers that perhaps his magic isn't failing because of a lack of power, but because he lacks the proper catalyst. He remembers how his thief skills functioned and concludes that he might need to purchase a specific tool to bridge the gap between his intent and the arcane result. As he treks through the outskirts of the woods, he muses that simply raising his level might eventually grant him access to magic, much like how his thief abilities once developed. With a firm resolve, he decides his next destination must be the City of Fortune. The journey leads him to the imposing stone walls and heavy wooden gates of a bustling settlement, the entrance to a new chapter in his quest. Once inside, he makes his way through the crowded streets until he stands before the familiar, sturdy architecture of the local Thieves' Guild. Inside the guild's hall, a group of frustrated adventurers are gathered around a locked chest, their voices rising in annoyance. One of them complains loudly about the weight they carried just to be met with a lock they cannot bypass. The guild receptionist calmly informs the group that their branch does not offer lock-picking services for treasure chests. Watching from the side, he feels a sense of reluctant obligation, realizing that his old skills might be exactly what these people need, even if he's trying to move past his life as a thief. His mind drifts to a chest he spotted earlier in the wilderness, dismissing it as likely containing nothing of significant value. Yet the irony of the situation isn't lost on him. He watches as the receptionist apologizes, explaining that while they usually carry lockpicks, they are currently out of stock. The trio of adventurers behind him groans in disappointment, realizing they'll have to find another way to open their prize. Determined to solve the problem, the woman with the large chest declares she will try to force it open herself. Her companion in the witch's hat suggests using an explosive potion instead, but the knight quickly shoots the idea down, fearing the blast would destroy whatever is inside. Realizing the guild lobby isn't the place for such experiments, they decide to move to a more open area. They gather their things, still bickering slightly about the best approach while the receptionist watches them go with a polite, if slightly concerned, expression. As they prepare to leave, the knight puffs out her chest with pride, reminding her companions that she is a holy knight blessed by the goddess. She insists that she won't be outsmarted by a simple goblin trap, claiming the creatures fled and left the chest behind in their haste. The witch sighs, admitting that her previous attempt to use a sleeping potion to loosen the lock failed miserably. The receptionist leans over the counter, listening to their plight, while the hooded figure of the former thief remains in the background, silently absorbing every detail of their struggle. He remains still as the group finally exits the building, their presence having drawn the attention of everyone in the room. Other adventurers whisper among themselves, noting that despite being in a town for beginners, that group's equipment suggests they're far more experienced than they appear. Watching them disappear through the doorway, he considers the irony of their situation. A holy knight is many things, but a master of locks is not one of them. It is a stark reminder that even the most powerful parties are crippled without the specific skills of a thief. He adjusts his hood and follows at a distance, his mind racing with the realization that his old life isn't as easy to leave behind as he thought. Though he is now a sage, the sight of a locked chest and a struggling party stirs a familiar instinct, and he decides to see if his useless skills might actually be their salvation. He approaches the stubborn chest, dismissing the need for traditional tools. With a confident smirk, he realizes that a lockpick is unnecessary when his fingertips alone can manipulate the mechanism. A soft click resonates as his skill takes hold, leaving the onlookers in stunned silence. His effortless display of skill leaves the holy knight wide-eyed, her gaze fixed on him in utter disbelief. She can only manage a faint, confused sound as she stares, trying to process how a mere beginner could bypass a lock that had defied their entire party. She and her companions can only stare in silence as he holds up a shimmering, ethereal key, much to the bewilderment of the gathered adventurers. Their intense, unblinking stares begin to make him feel self-conscious, as he hadn't expected such a dramatic reaction to a simple thief's trick. He wonders if he has perhaps revealed too much of his hidden expertise. Mato stares at the key in his palm, his brow furrowed in confusion as he wonders why he possesses such an item. In the background, the trio of adventurers remains by the quest board, their attention momentarily diverted from their task. Noticing his strange behavior, the cat-eared adventurer whispers to her companions, asking if they recognize the hooded figure. They watch him closely, trying to place his face but finding no immediate answers. As he moves away, they can't shake the feeling that they've seen him somewhere before, a nagging sense of déjà vu lingering in the air. They stand together, pondering the mystery of the stranger who seems so familiar, yet so distant. Ignoring the stares, he approaches the guild's reception desk as the previous adventurer departs. The receptionist calls for the next person in line, and he steps forward, politely requesting to register with the guild. She greets him with a professional smile, noting that it appears to be his first time at this establishment. With a polite tone, she asks for his name to begin the formal registration process. He identifies himself as Mato Slade, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Acknowledging the introduction, she explains that she will now proceed to verify his occupation and current level using the guild systems. Reaching across the counter, she presents a blank registration card and instructs him to place his hand upon it to finalize the magical scan of his abilities. He looks down at the white card, a wave of nostalgia washing over him as he recalls the beginner's rank he once held. He reflects on the hierarchy of the guild, visualizing the progression from the lowly white cards to the prestigious black ones at the very top. He places his hand upon the registration card, and a soft light emanates from the surface as his data is etched into the magical document. The receptionist observes the result, noting with a hint of surprise that he is a level 1 wiseman, a rare starting point for any adventurer. Looking down at the card, he feels a sense of relief seeing his name, Might Slade, and his age of 15 confirmed alongside his profession. He muses to himself that while he clearly possesses magical power, his level seems to have regressed to match his physical age, leaving him at the very beginning of his journey once more. He then poses a question that catches the woman behind the counter off guard, asking if a wiseman at such a low level is even capable of casting spells. She pauses, her expression turning to one of mild confusion at the fundamental nature of his inquiry. She explains that most individuals have already grasped the basics of their special techniques through practical experience or training by the time they seek official registration. It is unusual for someone to be so uncertain of their own innate abilities at this stage. This bustling metropolis, known as Fortune, is often called the City of Beginnings because it serves as a hub for those whose power has not yet surpassed the 10th level. It is a place designed for growth and the first steps of a long career. The receptionist continues her explanation, pointing out that most novices who arrive at the guild have already reached at least level 3 through the trials of travel and minor skirmishes. To arrive with no combat experience at all is a significant outlier. He takes in this information silently, his expression unreadable as the weight of his situation settles in. Nearby, other adventurers overhear the exchange and whisper amongst themselves, noting how difficult it will be for a mere level 1 to find a party willing to take him in. The receptionist looks at the young man with a mixture of pity and concern, wondering how she can possibly assign tasks to someone who seems so ill-prepared for the dangers of the world. She hesitates, her duty to the guild clashing with her worry for his safety. She leans in slightly, her professional mask slipping as she observes the young man's flushed cheeks and asks if he is feeling unwell. He quickly dismisses her concern, though he finds himself unsettled by an inexplicable sense of composure that feels foreign to his usual self. His gaze lingers momentarily on the details of her attire, a sudden wave of self-consciousness washing over him. He questions if this fluttering in his chest is a result of her maturity or a side effect of his own physical regression to a younger state. This internal stillness reminds him of the cool-headedness trait he once possessed as a thief, a skill that dictated how he perceived the world. He recalls his former allies, Farina, Shiska, and Inju, wondering if their constant stoicism was a burden he simply couldn't share back then, or if he was the only one who felt out of place. As he continues the conversation, he realizes with a start that the formal language and polite honorifics he once found so cumbersome now flow from his lips with effortless grace. It is as if his very tongue has been rewired for a different station in life. The realization dawns on him that his transition from a thief to a wiseman has altered more than just his title. He contemplates how the psychological imprint of his new vocation seems to be reshaping his personality and behavior more profoundly than he ever anticipated. Shifting his focus back to the present, he inquires about the methods for discovering his latent magical abilities. The receptionist advises that experience is the only true teacher, noting that many possess talents they never realize simply because they never attempt to use them in the heat of action. She then asks if he has ever experienced a moment where a power seemed to manifest on its own, perhaps by accident or in a moment of dire need. He pauses, searching his memory for any anomaly that might fit her description. A specific memory surfaces, a spectral, key-like object that had been in his hand. He hadn't dropped it. Rather, it had simply vanished into thin air, leaving him to wonder if that was his first true brush with the arcane. He inquires with the guild receptionist about the nature of magic that can manifest objects from thin air, even if they are insignificant. In response, she turns to the archives, pulling a heavy tome from the shelf to search for an answer. While scanning the pages, she explains that one possibility is summoning magic, a rare discipline practiced by summoners, though no such individuals are currently registered with this local guild. She further elaborates on high-level teleportation magic, but as he listens, he realizes that the strange phenomenon he experienced didn't quite match that description. The woman then describes a legendary art known as materialization, a feat from fairy tales where pure magical energy is solidified into physical matter. Closing the book with a firm thud, she concludes that such advanced magics are unheard of in a starting area like this, prompting him to offer his sincere thanks for the information. She expresses regret for not being of more assistance, but his attention is suddenly diverted as his gaze inadvertently drifts downward. There, nestled against her attire, a small, translucent object begins to manifest, leaving him completely stunned by the sudden reappearance of the mysterious item. He stammers an apology, his face flushed with embarrassment as the guild receptionist looks on with a mix of confusion and professional patience. The spectral key, which had so suddenly appeared in such an inappropriate place, remains the source of his intense discomfort. Seeking to move past the awkward encounter, he asks about immediate work opportunities. The receptionist, regaining her composure, politely directs him to the bulletin board to find a quest that matches his current qualifications. As he turns to leave, the steady rhythm of footsteps echoes against the stone floor, signaling the approach of someone with a clear purpose. Walking through the bustling guild hall, he reflects on the difficulty of finding solo work, noting that most party recruitment requires at least a level 3 ranking. His mind drifts back to the mysterious key and the receptionist's reaction, only to be interrupted when a voice calls out, asking for a moment of his time. Turning toward the source, he finds himself face-to-face with a vibrant woman adorned with a large ribbon, her presence radiating a confidence that marks her as a follower of the goddess Iris. He notes the stark contrast between her and the divine figures he has encountered before, sensing a different kind of strength in her gaze. She wastes no time, leaning in with a knowing smile to ask if he was the one holding a particular key just moments ago. She suggests, with a hint of playfulness, that perhaps he stumbled upon a goblin's treasure key by sheer luck. Before he can offer a full explanation or a denial, she cuts him off, advising him not to jump to conclusions too quickly. She speaks of a maiden's intuition, a sense that she claims is far more reliable than mere observation, leaving him momentarily speechless. With a playful wink and a toss of her hair, she warns him never to underestimate that intuition before turning to walk away. He is left standing there, bewildered by the encounter and wondering if she truly sensed the magical nature of the key or if she was simply testing him. He stands there, slightly overwhelmed by the woman's persistence as she presses him about the master key for treasure chest. Winking with absolute confidence, she declares that her intuition is never wrong, leaning into her claim with a playful yet firm resolve. Because of her certainty, he begins to reflect on the strange phenomenon from earlier, remembering how the key manifested in his hand the moment the lock began to glow. He questions if such a convenient tool truly exists or if he can even summon again at will. Standing amidst the bustle of the town, he weighs his options, realizing that unlike his past life, there is no need to rush into reckless decisions. He remains torn between following this stranger or simply walking away, unsure of the best path forward. Despite his hesitation, she maintains a bright, expectant smile, even as he warns her that there is no guarantee he can actually open whatever lock she has in mind. In response to his caution, she cheerfully offers him the freedom to decide how they split the rewards, promising a fair share if he succeeds. Her boundless optimism leaves him worried that she might be far too sheltered for the harsh realities of the world. Eventually, the two of them set off together, leaving the town behind as they trek across the open plains toward a specific destination. Upon arriving at a clearing, they find two other adventurers waiting beside a heavy chest, with the armored woman thanking them for making the journey. They begin formal introductions to solidify their new alliance. The blonde knight identifies herself as Risti, a level 3 swordsman, while the small girl beneath the oversized hat introduces herself as Nanes, a pharmacist. Following their lead, the energetic woman with a large ribbon proudly announces her name as Platina. She boasts about her title, the Silver Flash, a name that seems to carry significant weight within the Beginner's Guild. Despite her confident proclamation, she silently admits to herself that the title is self-bestowed, a name she carries only in her own heart as they stand together in the open wilderness. Turning her attention to the hooded figure standing nearby, the witch of the group inquires if he is a magic user, judging by his mysterious attire. In response, the young man lowers his hood slightly and introduces himself as Mado. He holds up his adventure card, revealing that he is officially a level 1 sage, though he is pleased that his appearance suggests more experience. This revelation catches the blonde knight off guard, as she suddenly remembers seeing him registering as a newcomer at the guild earlier that day. With the introductions complete, the three women strike a confident pose, declaring themselves as seniors. He can't help but feel a bit overwhelmed by their sudden enthusiasm and their colorful, self-proclaimed titles. Moving back to the business at hand, the The woman with the ribbon gestures toward the treasure chest, inviting him to test his ki. He agrees to try, noting that while he's unsure of the outcome, he is well-versed in avoiding traps. He kneels before the chest, the weight of the party's expectations heavy upon him. Platina remarks on the utility of a sage, noting how handy they are to have around for such tasks. However, the witch in the group remains skeptical, her eyes narrowing as she questions the convenience of him simply finding the key. She finds the whole situation highly suspicious. Leaning in uncomfortably close, she peers at him, causing him to recoil slightly at the sudden lack of personal space. She quickly apologizes, explaining that her vision is poor and she needs to be near to see clearly. This reminds him of Shiska, who used enhancement magic to fix her sight after reading too many books. He wonders if his new sage class will eventually grant him similar magical capabilities. The eccentric woman then takes a deep sniff of him, noting that he doesn't smell unpleasant. He reacts with a look of disgust, prompting her to ask why he's making such a face, to which he simply replies that he bathed just yesterday. This mention of hygiene triggers a brief longing for the comfort of a large bathhouse, a luxury that makes one feel truly alive. He looks at the weary adventurers and realizes that they, too, likely struggle to find proper facilities while out in the field. Breaking his reverie, Platina calls out to him, asking if he is prepared to proceed. She warns that the area is prone to monster attacks, and they shouldn't linger. He turns his full attention back to the ornate box, centering himself. He wonders if he can replicate the success he had previously and successfully unlock the treasure. He stares at the chest, noticing a peculiar glow emanating from the lock that seems invisible to others. The young man stares intently, confirming his suspicion. The lock is indeed glowing, but only to his eyes, while the rest of the group waits in anticipation behind him. He reaches out, channeling his mana, and a shimmering, ethereal key materializes between his fingers. This display of unknown magic leaves his companion stunned. Platina wonders aloud if he truly just conjured a key from nothing, while the witch, despite her own expertise, admits she has never encountered such a spell in all her studies. He carefully inserts the magical tool into the mechanism, hearing a satisfying click as the lock disengages, and assures the others that no traps have been triggered as they watch in awe. As the key dissolves back into light, a wave of mild exhaustion washes over him, causing him to clench his fist as he feels the drain on his mana. He looks down at his tightened hand, realizing with a sense of gravity that this was his very first act of true magic since becoming a sage. His moment of reflection is interrupted when Platina calls his name, and he turns back to the chest, ready to reveal its contents. The group stares in awe as the chest finally clicks open, revealing its contents. The air is thick with anticipation and a lingering hum of Mado's unique magic. Far from the dungeon's depths, in a realm of ethereal light, the goddess Linares stands alone. She gazes into the distance, her expression unreadable as she senses the ripples of fate. She observes the unfolding events with a curious glint in her eyes, noting how a mere level 3 human dared to address a hero without a hint of fear. To her, it is a fascinating spectacle, one that warrants closer inspection as a shimmering portal begins to manifest before her. As the light intensifies, a familiar voice calls out to her, addressing her with familial respect. Platina approaches, her footsteps light against the shimmering floor of their divine sanctuary. The two engage in a serious discussion, with Platina questioning if Linares was the one who orchestrated the recent events, given that the one who spoke up was one of her own followers. Platina admits she had been keeping a close eye on Farina, even witnessing her return to the motherland, but Linares clarifies that such matters were beyond her direct management. Seeking deeper answers, the younger woman asks why her sister chose to favor a thief and permitted an act as significant as a job change, which seemingly defies the established logic of their world. Linares responds with a calm, steady gaze, explaining that her power alone is insufficient to alter the fundamental laws of existence. She reveals a profound truth. It was the world itself that granted permission for these anomalies to occur. Platina accepts the explanation but remains wary, expressing a quiet hope that this deep-seated devotion does not ultimately conflict with the will of their lord. Meanwhile, oblivious to the divine discourse, Mado continues his journey, his destiny now inextricably linked to forces far beyond his understanding. He remains the subject of their divine discourse, as Platina questions the goddess, asking if she was the one who informed Farina and her companions of the choice he had made. She watches in silence as a shimmering rift of light manifests before them, a silent testament to the shifting tides of fate. While the goddess turns her gaze away, her mind lingers on the group of adventurers who had discovered a treasure beyond their expectations. Her eyes narrow, sensing the ripples of change emanating from the mortal realm. She reflects on the chest they found, an object no ordinary adventurer in that region should have been able to unlock. Yet, he had opened it using a specific key, confirming her suspicion that his descent to level 1 was far from a simple regression. Back on the surface, the companions stand in awe of the young man, their eyes wide as they realize the truth. They whisper his name, beginning to understand that he is no mere novice, but something far more significant than his level would suggest. The group gathers around the open chest, their eyes widening at the shimmering hoard of gold coins within. It is a sight they clearly haven't seen in a long time, representing a sudden and massive shift in their fortunes. Holding one of the coins up to the light, the energetic warrior marvels at its weight, her voice filled with newfound respect as she suggests that perhaps they should start addressing their benefactor as Lord Mado. The others listen, their expressions a mix of relief and lingering disbelief at their change in status. Looking out over the horizon, they reflect on their past hardships, realizing that this windfall means an end to the days of surviving on nothing but thin leaf soup. It is a turning point they had only dreamed of reaching, marking their graduation from the depths of poverty. As they stand together in the open field, the conversation turns to the morality of their recent actions. While the work was difficult and perhaps unconventional, they take solace in the fact that no innocent lives were harmed in the process. They justify their path, focusing on the outcome rather than the methods. The hooded automaton observes them quietly before speaking up, her calm demeanor contrasting with the group's lingering excitement as she brings up a new point of discussion. Her presence is a steadying force amidst their emotional whirlwind. Hearing this, the ribbon-haired woman blinks in surprise, her gaze shifting toward her companion, who remains stoic and focused on the task at hand. A realization seems to dawn on her, though its nature remains unclear to the others. Suddenly overcome with a surge of dramatic resolve, she drops to her knees, declaring with theatrical intensity that while her physical form might be compromised, her spirit remains untainted. Her companions can only watch in baffled silence, wondering how the conversation took such a bizarre and melodramatic turn. Amidst the confusion, a hand reaches out to settle the matter of the spoils, with the thief insisting that his current share is more than enough. He seems content to let the others benefit from the bulk of the treasure, leaving them to process his unexpected generosity as he prepares to move on. He holds out 3 silver coins, explaining that each of them will receive one as their fair share of the reward. Because of this unexpected offer, the 3 adventurers stare at him in stunned silence, their mouths agape at his sudden generosity. He continues his explanation, noting that after consulting with guild members, he learned that even for independent lockpicking requests, the standard fee shouldn't exceed 30%, especially for a first job. Having settled the matter of the gold, he offers a sincere apology for his earlier intimidating behavior, admitting he was out of line. Internally, he winces at his own attempt to play the mentor, feeling he might have leaned too hard into a stoic persona, yet he worries that without some guidance, these novices would be easily exploited. As he prepares to depart, the woman with the large ribbon looks down, her voice trembling as she questions if such a small sum is truly all he requires. In response to her question, she spirals into a dramatic misunderstanding, wondering aloud if a single silver coin is the meager price he places on their virtue, prompting a sharp, exasperated denial from him. With the awkward exchange finally behind him, he casts one last glance over his shoulder at the group before disappearing into the dense forest. He is no longer alone in the woods, as a group of small, green-skinned goblins and a hulking orc emerge from the dense foliage, their weapons drawn and ready for a fight. Seeing the threat, the energetic woman with the large ribbon notes their arrival with a mix of surprise and readiness, while the young witch beside her looks on with wide, uncertain eyes. The monsters loom closer. One is a brutish orc with a heavy necklace and a jagged blade, accompanied by a smaller goblin clutching a bow, their presence signaling a dangerous escalation. Meanwhile, the witch frantically searches her pouches for a useful item, only to pull out a vial that she worries might have a counterproductive, perhaps even embarrassing, effect. The young man watches her, questioning if she possesses any potions actually meant for combat. As the standoff continues, she turns her attention to him, wondering aloud how he can remain so composed despite being only level 1. He simply replies that he is actually quite tense, given that this is his very first real encounter. Internally, he reflects on his precarious situation. A level 1 sage who lacks any offensive magic would typically be a liability in such a skirmish. Yet, as he tightens his grip on his sword, a quiet confidence settles over him. He has no intention of being defeated. Standing firm alongside the 3 women, he decides to treat this encounter as a stroke of fate. He resolves to ensure they all gain the experience and success they need from this battle, his blade glinting as the fight begins. He watches as the energetic warrior steps forward, her voice ringing out across the clearing. She boldly shouts a challenge to the monsters, demanding they focus all their aggression on her. The goblins pause, their primitive minds momentarily baffled by her bold provocation as they exchange confused glances. As the ground erupts with the force of their initial charge, the young which observes the unfolding chaos with a keen, analytical eye. The warrior holds her ground, absorbing the goblin's blows with a grin and declaring that the thrill of combat is exactly why she trains so relentlessly. Nearby, her companion joins the fray, her blade flashing as she strikes down their foes with practiced precision. Watching the display, the witch realizes that the warrior's technique isn't a standard knight skill like Royal Order or a paladin's protection, but something far more specialized and perhaps more dangerous. Suddenly, a massive hobgoblin towers over the smaller creatures, its guttural roar signaling a terrifying shift in the battle's intensity. She quickly shouts a warning to the group, alerting them to the arrival of the much larger threat as the beast prepares to strike. Instead of fear, the warrior responds with exuberant enthusiasm, inviting the beast to give her everything it has. Her companions can only watch in exasperation, finding her complete lack of caution and suggestive wording deeply unsettling in the heat of combat. She braces herself as the massive beast lunges, its fist a looming shadow over the battlefield. She remains unmoved by the thunderous impact, her shield absorbing the brute force of the blow with unnatural ease. To her astonishment, the creature is the one sent reeling, tumbling backward as if struck by a gale. She stares at her shield, baffled by the lack of weight behind such a monstrous strike. She watches as the hobgoblin collapses into a heap of confusion and sudden sneezing, while the thief observes from the sidelines, his mind racing to understand the sudden shift in the battle's tide. He isn't the only one observing. The automaton realizes this is no ordinary defense, but a manifestation of a sage's magic. The realization sparks a new sense of awe in the silver-haired warrior as she begins to grasp the true scale of the power at play. Behind the safety of her shield, the battlefield is suddenly filled with the sound of violent sneezing as the monster's aggression is replaced by involuntary spasms. Emerging from the shadows, the young witch proudly displays her secret weapon, a pepper bomb. She boasts of its rarity and effectiveness, explaining that it was a valuable trump card used to disrupt the enemy's senses. Despite the chaos she caused, she seems slightly underwhelmed by the result, muttering about the bomb's limited impact. Meanwhile, the silver-haired warrior finds the monster's predicament more irritating than humorous, demanding they cease their incessant noise. She scolds the others, her face flushed with indignation as she reminds them that they are in the middle of a life-or-death struggle and laughter is entirely inappropriate. Nearby, the thief watches the disoriented goblins with a calculating gaze, wondering why someone would employ such a specific, high-level technique in these woods. The warrior stands with an air of refined authority, her posture reflecting a discipline that the chroniclers often associate with the noble classes, a grace that seems out of place in this muddy skirmish. However, the reprieve is short-lived as the massive orc and its goblin cohorts begin to shake off the effects of the pepper, their growls echoing through the clearing once more. Seeing the tide turn, he calls out to his companions, Risti and Nanes, realizing that while his subtle arts can cow lesser foes, they hold no sway over a beast as formidable as a hobgoblin. He blurs into motion, a streak of gray and brown as he launches a series of rapid strikes, his movements so swift that the others can barely track his path through the undergrowth. As the towering monster prepares to crush everything in its path, the group watches in stunned silence, wondering if this is another display of the strange magic they've witnessed today. With a sudden explosive burst of energy, he drives his weapon into the creature's chest, the impact radiating a blinding light that signals a decisive turn in the battle. He lands the strike with precision, the impact sending the massive orc stumbling back as the thief holds his ground in a low, tactical stance. Standing over the fallen brute, he stares down the remaining monsters with a cold, unwavering gaze, asking if they truly wish to persist in this folly. Terrified by the display of raw power, the goblins and their wounded leaders scramble away, disappearing into the dense foliage of the forest. As the sounds of their retreat fade, he remains still, watching the tree line to ensure the threat has truly passed. Platina approaches him, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and realization that his combat style was far from that of a typical sage. She bursts with questions, amazed by his strength and eager to know what spell he used to fell the hobgoblin. But he simply explains it was a matter of physical prowess and a well-timed distraction. Internally, he muses on his current state. Despite being reset to level 1 and losing his specialized thief skills, his fundamental physical capabilities seem strangely intact. Nearby, Platina's companions remark on how one shouldn't judge by levels alone, leaving her blushing with embarrassment over her earlier promise to be his protector. She stands there, face flushed with embarrassment, as Mato offers a bit of unexpected wisdom. He suggests that while feeling shame can be a catalyst for growth, one shouldn't let it consume them, advising her to keep such feelings in moderation. Turning his attention to the others, he offers a tactical critique to the hooded warrior, Risti. He acknowledges her raw power, but emphasizes the need for more disciplined sword training. noting that against heavy-hitting foes like hobgoblins, precision and evasion are the keys to victory. He doesn't stop there, praising the way the silver-haired knight drew the enemy's focus and commending the small mage, Nanes, for bravery in the heat of battle. His words carry a weight of experience that seems to catch them all off guard. Suddenly, a wave of self-consciousness hits him as he realizes he has been lecturing them with the authority of a seasoned veteran. The group stares back, clearly taken aback by the depth of his insight and the casual way he analyzed their combat performance. To ease the tension, he explains that understanding the capabilities of those around him is a survival instinct, a habit formed from countless encounters with dangerous beasts where knowing your allies is just as vital as knowing your enemy. The realization settles over the night. She sees now that despite his humble rank, he is the one most keenly aware of everyone's strengths and weaknesses, watching over them with a level of care they hadn't anticipated. Risty smiles, admitting that his advice consistently highlights her own oversights. She reflects on her past arrogance, feeling a pang of guilt for having once looked down on him as a mere thief without a shred of magical talent. With his piece said, he simply bids them farewell and begins to walk away, leaving the group in a state of quiet contemplation as they watch him depart into the distance. He leaves them standing there, a group of seasoned adventurers and a holy knight, all staring in silent awe at the depth of his combat insight. This hidden prowess stems from a constant, passive ability known as the lock eye, which allows him to perceive the metaphysical locks binding both the living and the inanimate once specific conditions are met. To complement this vision, he possesses the white key, a specialized technique that manifests a physical key from his own magical essence, capable of shattering those very locks. As he continues his solitary walk, he reflects on the voice of instinct that guides him, realizing this celestial knowledge is a burden and a gift bestowed upon one with the title of sage. His contemplation is abruptly interrupted when a hand reaches out and firmly grasps his own, confirming his suspicion that the lock he had sensed earlier was indeed a manifestation of his unique magical resonance. The woman with the large ribbon, Platina, insists that he shouldn't flee like a criminal, reminding him that his contributions were the most vital to their recent success. She expresses her deep gratitude, noting that she was the one who felt protected by him, while the young witch chimes in, pointing out his selfless act of discarding silver coins as proof of his character. They collectively urge him to return to the city with them to discuss matters further. Feeling the weight of their collective gaze and the physical grip on his hand, he decides that accompanying them is the wisest course of action to avoid drawing unnecessary suspicion to himself. He reached out and took Platina's hand, a silent acknowledgement of the strange turn of events. Reflecting on the situation, he mused that this, too, must be a twist of fate. With a resigned but determined spirit, he decided to accompany the group for just a little while longer, though he couldn't help but wonder where this choice would ultimately lead him. At the guild counter, a heavy pouch of coins is exchanged for the spoils of a recent excursion. The clerk tallies the total, announcing that the items are worth 42 silver coins. They stare in disbelief at the unexpected windfall, their eyes wide with shock. The amount is far more than they had anticipated for a simple scouting mission. She clarifies the breakdown, noting that a bounty had been placed on a hobgoblin and its subordinates previously spotted in the area. Since the descriptions matched perfectly, the reward was granted in full. The young mage breathes a sigh of relief, grateful that they managed to resolve the situation without having to resort to a lethal confrontation. It was a peculiar trait of these monsters that allowed for such an outcome. This phenomenon occurs when a significant gap in power is demonstrated, forcing the creatures to cede their territory and retreat. By asserting dominance, the group effectively cleared the area without shedding blood, driving the monsters far from the village. They reflect on their past methods, realizing they had always focused solely on hunting down targets rather than understanding the ecology of the land. This new approach has opened their eyes to a more efficient way of adventuring. The receptionist watches them with a warm smile, commenting on how fortunate it is that they have finally found a fourth member to round out their party. The group looks back, perhaps considering the permanence of this new arrangement. He stands alone in the corridor, his thoughts heavy as the receptionist mentions that his involvement was merely a request for cooperation for the time being. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him, breaking his solitude. He is surrounded by a group of boisterous men who insist he should join their ranks, arguing that a party of men is far superior to one filled with women. This commotion draws the eyes of everyone in the guild hall, as whispers of past recruitment battles begin to circulate among the onlookers. Amidst the pressure, the woman with the large ribbon steps forward, raising a hand to politely but firmly decline the offer, making it clear she has no desire to join any other group. Standing beside her companion, she adds that she has business to attend to with the young man they were just pestering. The surrounding crowd erupts in murmurs of disbelief, recognizing her companion as a talented new magic user they had seen earlier. Stunned by the rejection, the lead adventurer from the group of men staggers back, unable to fathom why they would choose anyone over a man of his caliber. He begins to boast loudly, claiming his position in the prestigious Fortune Guild and his mastery of the flourish spike technique make him far more reliable than a commoner, even going so far as to predict they will soon regret their choice and come begging for his help. Seeing the scene he is making, the two women decide to slip away quietly to avoid the unwanted attention, though one can't help but notice how closely her friend is hovering. They draw quite a crowd as they move through the guild hall, the whispers of envious men trailing behind them like a wake. One man mutters about how lucky they are to be in such company, while another expresses a more lewd desire to be scolded by such beauties. She, the one beneath the wide-brimmed hat, narrows her eyes, feeling the weight of the unwanted attention. The realization that their group is becoming far too conspicuous weighs on her, and she worries about the complications that might arise if they cross paths with certain individuals in this state. As the day begins to fade, the bright sky gives way to the soft, drifting clouds of evening. By the time night falls, the warm glow of lanterns spills from the windows of a sturdy, two-story inn, welcoming travelers and locals alike into its bustling common room. Inside its walls, the group gathers around a table laden with food, raising their heavy wooden mugs in a boisterous toast. They celebrate their reunion and offer thanks to Mato for his help, the sound of clashing wood punctuating their shared relief. They find the meal to be a welcome change, and the girl with the feline features praises the cook's skill, noting that the quality of the food is why they chose to stay at this particular establishment. Her companion agrees, reflecting on the long stretch of days they spent eating nothing but hard, dry bread. The conversation turns toward their recent troubles, specifically a quest that turned out to be a blunder. Since they returned to their own accord, the request was deemed invalid, leaving them with nothing to show for their efforts. While they continue their meal, the two companions lean in to whisper about the third, marveling at how she maintains such an air of nobility and grace. They find it striking that someone so beautiful and seemingly highborn would choose to live such a frugal, disciplined life as an adventurer. She catches the tail end of their praise and blushes slightly, dismissing the notion of being anything special. With a modest smile, she insists that she is merely a wandering adventurer like any other, though her refined manner of eating suggests a background far more sophisticated than she lets on. They continue their conversation at the inn, with the boisterous warrior laughing off her grand title, claiming she is merely a wandering adventurer known as the Silver Flash. Mato, observing the camaraderie, inquires if she and the energetic girl with the large ribbon had been acquainted for long. She confirms his suspicion, explaining that they had arrived in the city together in search of work, eventually registering at the Adventurers Guild on the very same day. The conversation shifts to their capabilities, with the cat-eared girl proudly declaring her second level while noting her companions have reached the third. Curious, she turns her gaze toward Mato, questioning how a mere level 1 could possess such overwhelming strength. He considers her question, admitting that while his situation is unique, those who walk the path of a sage are often capable of wielding various forms of magic beyond the norm. A quiet moment of reflection follows as he stares into his mug, wondering if his stagnant level truly makes him an anomaly in this world. Breaking the silence, he explains that the magic he employed to unlock the chest earlier is one of the few spells he can reliably cast. The trio listens intently as he describes the unlocking spell, a specialized technique of the sage class often utilized when a party lacks a dedicated thief to handle such obstacles. As he speaks, his mind wanders to the ancient knowledge he possesses regarding the lock and the white key, sensing that the mechanisms he encountered were far more complex than any ordinary human lock. He is asked about his age by the group, prompting a round of introductions. Risti mentions she is 18, while Nanace is 15 and their youngest companion, the witch, is only 14. In response, he estimates his own age to be around 15 before presenting his official identification card. The three girls lean in, their eyes widening as they inspect the document, confirming his status as a level 1 adventurer. The silver-haired warrior expresses her genuine surprise, noting that the card's information is undeniable. She finds it incredibly motivating to know that someone as capable as him is actually their peer, sharing the same age group. With a shared sense of camaraderie, they raise their mugs in a toast, promising to remain friendly should their paths cross again within the city walls. He nods in agreement, acknowledging the new bond formed over the meal. One of the young adventurers, the small witch, indulges in the feast, her cheeks flushed with contentment. She admits that such luxury feels almost overwhelming, as if it might soften her resolve if she gets too used to it. She takes another sip of the apple ale, marveling at its sweetness. It is a far cry from her past, where such simple pleasures were an impossible dream and survival was the only priority. Watching them, he is suddenly struck by a wave of nostalgia, recalling the many meals he shared with Farina and the others. A quiet melancholy settles over him as he wonders where his former companions are and what they're doing at this very moment. Outside, the lively sounds of the tavern spill into the night air, a stark contrast to the private reflections occurring within its walls as the evening continues. Platina leans in close, her voice bubbling with drunken excitement as she asks Mato if he is truly paying attention to her story. He assures her that he is, though the sheer intensity of her enthusiasm seems to be testing his patience. She suddenly lunges further across the table, her proximity catching him completely off guard. He let out a startled sound as the physical distance between them vanished in an instant. Her intoxication becomes undeniable as she slumps against the wood, her face flushed and her eyes glazed. One of her companions warns her to be careful lest she spill her drink, but she dismissively claims she is perfectly fine, despite her obvious lack of balance. Seeing the situation spiraling, the young man politely calls for water to help sober her up. The bartender, a sturdy man in a bandana, delivers the drink and asks if he has officially joined the girls' party. Curious about the newcomer's role, he explains that they simply share a bit of history, while the three adventurers watch him with a mix of curiosity and scrutiny, trying to understand the depth of their connection. A moment later, he senses something unusual in the periphery of his vision, but when the others notice his distraction, he quickly brushes it off as nothing. The night finally takes its toll on the energetic woman, leaving her completely incapacitated and mumbling about her resolve. He effortlessly hoists her onto his shoulder, preparing to escort the group back. Her friends are visibly impressed by the display of physical power, remarking that for someone with magical abilities, he possesses remarkable strength. He simply shrugs it off, stating that carrying her is a simple task. He walks down the hallway, the weight of the unconscious woman heavy on his shoulder. One of the onlookers remarks that his rough handling makes him look more like an abductor than a friend. He ignores the jab, simply asking which room belongs to his companion. Following the witch's direction, he stops before the third door on the left, ready to conclude this long night. The sound of the latch clicking and the heavy thud of footsteps echoes through the quiet corridor as they enter the room. Once inside, he carefully transfers the sleeping woman into the arms of the startled witch. With a brief apology and a request for them to look after her, he turns to leave, ignoring the cat-eared girl's indignant cry of thief as she watches him prepare to depart. Without a moment's hesitation, the young man vaults through the open window, his cloak billowing behind him as he drops into the night air. He lands silently, his eyes already scanning the surroundings for any sign of pursuit. He moves with practiced ease, scaling a stone wall and sprinting across the rooftops. Below, the town remains oblivious to his swift departure as he puts distance between himself and the inn. Mid-leap, he considers the efficiency of his thief skills. While he is using them now to navigate the urban landscape, he knows he must be careful not to overextend. His movements are a blur of shadow against the moonlight. His destination looms in the distance. A solitary, weathered cabin nestled deep within the dark embrace of the forest, far from the prying eyes of the town. Inside the dimly lit cabin, three men gloat over their haul. The leader scoffs at how gullible adventurers can be, while his companion notes that the gear they stole from those girls seemed quite valuable. He continues, explaining the plan to move the stolen goods. A transporter will arrive tomorrow under the guise of a merchant, and they must finalize the deal outside the city limits to ensure they aren't tracked. Eager to see the spoils, the youngest of the group reaches into the heavy sack. He wonders aloud what might be hidden inside a particular box they've taken, his eyes gleaming with greed. Without warning, the lantern on the table flickers and dies, plunging the room into sudden darkness. The thieves jump back, their hearts racing as the silence of the woods presses in on them. They peer into the shadows, voices trembling with fear. One of them curses, frantically questioning if the town guard has somehow managed to find their hideout. A calm, mocking voice cuts through their panic as a figure steps into the doorway. Mato looms over them, asking if they would have preferred the guards to be the ones catching them. The men recoil in shock, demanding to know how he found them, and if he is a rival thief looking for a cut. As they scramble, a small, hooded figure appears behind the intruder. Realizing the danger, the leader barks an order for his men to hold their breath and prepare to make a run for it. Before they can move, a blinding flash erupts in the center of the room. The air fills with a thick, disorienting haze as the cabin is consumed by chaos. He watches as the thieves scramble from the cabin, their heavy footfalls echoing through the trees as they flee into the darkness of the forest. Panicked and breathless, the men argue amongst themselves, one of them fearfully mentioning the name of Sister Mabel, only to be silenced by his leader's sharp command to keep his mouth shut and stop using names. Their flight is cut short when a hidden snare snaps tight, hoisting one of the criminals into the air with a sudden, violent jerk that leaves his companion reeling in confusion. As more of the group find themselves dangling helplessly from the branches, the young sage steps forward, noting with a cold smirk that their own traps have been turned against them due to their sheer carelessness. Beside him, the hooded automaton remains silent and watchful while the thieves realize their predicament is dire, their morale shattering as they face the consequences of their failed heist. Standing before the suspended man, he delivers a clear ultimatum. All the stolen equipment must be returned by the end of the night, or the price will be far steeper. The criminals stare back in disbelief, stunned that they are being granted a chance to walk away, questioning if he truly intends to let them escape after such a confrontation. Leaning in close to the leader with a chilling intensity, he warns them that his eyes will be on them constantly, reminding the man that as fellow dwellers of the underworld, they both know exactly what happens to those who break their word. The thieves flee into the night, their voices hushed but frantic. One of them warns that if they are caught tonight, it's all over, while another snaps at him to keep quiet, reminding him that their lives depend on completing this task. Watching them go, she notes to her companion that their loose lips provided exactly the information needed. It is now certain that Mabel had no involvement in the theft, which simplifies the next steps of their investigation. She moves through the quiet streets, her cloak fluttering as she passes a stone well. The town is still, the only sound being the soft rhythm of her footsteps on the pavement. Reaching a heavy wooden door, she produces a small, glowing sphere. With a practiced motion, she applies the device to the lock, and the orb pulses with a soft light as it begins its work. The mechanism clicks, and she slips inside the building, her movements fluid and silent. She navigates the dimly lit hallway with the confidence of someone who knows exactly where they're going. Looking back at the door she just bypassed, she reflects on how much has changed. In the past, such a lock would have been an impassable barrier without the proper key, but those days are long gone. She gazes at the glowing orb in her palm, a faint smile touching her lips. It occurs to her that with her current set of skills, she is acting less like a sage and more like a master of keys. Pushing open the final door, she pauses as a familiar aroma hits her. She recognizes the scent immediately, her eyes narrowing as she prepares to confront whatever lies within the room. She watches from the shadows as the woman rises from the steaming water, the surface breaking with a heavy splash as she stands. She drapes a towel over her head and exhales a sigh of relief, grateful for the magical water heating tool she managed to acquire. Her tranquility is shattered as the intruder steps into the room. Sensing the threat, she instantly reaches for a blade and demands to know if it is an intruder, while the newcomer desperately tries to call for a halt, pleading for her to wait. She dodges the woman's lethal lunge with practiced ease, pinning her arms to the wall to force a sudden, tense stalemate while commanding her to be quiet. She looks the woman directly in the eye and identifies herself as Crow, explaining that it is her. This revelation causes the woman's aggression to vanish instantly, replaced by a look of stunned recognition as she realizes who stands before her. He stepped into the room, his presence sudden and unannounced. The woman inside, caught completely off guard while bathing, scrambled to cover herself, her eyes wide with alarm as she reached for a nearby cloth. Seeing his face clearly, her fear turned to utter bewilderment. She whispered the name Crow before correcting herself, her voice trembling as she realized the man standing before her was Mado. He offered a quiet apology for the intrusion, his gaze averted to give her some semblance of privacy. He explained that he had once left the Thieves' Guild and felt entering through the back was his only option to speak with her. She stood, clutching the towel tightly, her confusion only deepening as she studied his features. To her, he looked exactly as he did 10 years ago when he first departed, and she couldn't help but question why he was now dressed in the garb of a magic user rather than a thief. He acknowledged her shock, admitting that while it might be hard to believe, he had indeed regained his youth. He stated firmly that the man she once knew as a thief was gone, replaced by someone entirely different. To prove his words, he raised a gloved hand, and a soft, magical glow began to emanate from his palm. He revealed that he had transcended his past life to become a sage, possessing a level of mana far beyond what he ever had before. She stared at the display of power, her mind racing to find a logical explanation for such an impossible transformation. She muttered that such a feat was unheard of, something that could only be described as a miracle granted by the goddess herself. Her gaze sharpened as she looked directly into his eyes, searching for any sign of a lie or a trick. She asked him one final time, her voice filled with a mix of hope and skepticism, if he was truly being serious about his new identity. She recalls the day he left, a memory of her shouting about the folly of trusting a prophecy and facing a demon dragon without magic. Despite her pleas, he had been resolute, his young face set with a determination that even then she couldn't shake. Returning to the present, she searches his eyes, seeing that same unwavering spirit reflected in his now rejuvenated face. He meets her gaze steadily, waiting for her judgment. With a soft sigh, she reaches out and rests a hand on his shoulder, admitting that she believes him. After all, she reminds him, he is her little brother, a bond that transcends the impossibility of his transformation. He looks down, a flicker of guilt crossing his features as he offers a quiet apology for the shock he's caused. The light of a single candle flickers between them, casting long shadows against the stone walls of the office. She settles onto the edge of her desk, her expression softening as she reflects on his past struggles with his lack of mana. She admits to feeling heartless for having forgotten how much that had weighed on him, while he, in turn, apologizes for intruding at such an ungodly hour. A playful smirk touches her lips as she teases him, remarking that she certainly didn't raise him to be the sort of man who sneaks into a guild master's private quarters unannounced. He can't help but offer a small, sheepish smile in return. He observes her with newfound respect, noting that she has truly stepped into the role of guild master, succeeding the man they both once called the old man. Shifting the conversation to other old friends, he inquires about the whereabouts of Gazel and Aiku. She informs him that the pair rose to the rank of executives 3 years prior, though they are currently away from the city, handling a high-priority investigation. She listens as Mado ponders the current state of the guild, noting that high-ranking members are now taking requests directly from nobles. He admits to himself that he is no longer a part of this world and shouldn't interfere, yet the concern in his voice is evident. Because of his hesitation, he turns his attention fully to her, softly calling out her name as if to ground himself in the present moment. In response to his gaze, she lets out a heavy sigh, recalling the recent trouble where an associate of a guild member was caught stealing. Though the thieves were apprehended and the stolen goods returned, the incident weighs heavily on her, as she fears such scandals will only continue to arise. Her expression hardens as she declares that those who tarnish the guild's reputation must be dealt with severely, her resolve as guild master momentarily overshadowing her sisterly warmth. Seeing her intensity, he gently suggests that there are surely other ways for those with thief skills to earn a living, prompting her to pause and consider his perspective. She eventually stands, deciding to hand the culprits over to the guild for discipline while tightening internal regulations, knowing that if the city guards are to intervene, the guild would face harsh penalties. As she prepares to move, he reaches out, his hand gently brushing her face in a gesture of quiet support. He thanks her for everything and reminds her that if she ever needs his help, she only needs to ask. This sudden tenderness catches her off guard, leaving her momentarily speechless as he looks at her with the same familiar, caring eyes she remembers from years ago. She admits her surprise at his return, confessing that she had feared the worst, that he might have perished during his long and arduous travels. He responds with a humble reflection, crediting his survival to the companions he found along the way, admitting that he could never have progressed so far on his own. She observes that despite the hardships, he never truly gave up. Clenching his fist as the weight of the past settles over him, he listens as she inquires whether his former party has since disbanded. He clarifies that while they haven't officially parted ways, the situation is complicated. His mind drifts to his former allies, the knight, the priestess, and the automaton, realizing they likely believe him to be dead, and knowing they each had their own duties to attend to in their respective homes. Reassuring her with a gentle touch on the shoulder, he suggests that as long as they are all still drawing breath, their paths are bound to cross again someday. As she looks at him, a strange vision of a locked seal flashes through her mind, a realization dawning on her that there were things she had been blind to from the very beginning. Breaking the heavy silence, he admits with a sheepish look that he is still struggling to adjust to his new role as a sage, finding that most magic remains beyond his current reach. She considers this, suggesting that if he intends to study the mystic arts, a grimoire might be his best path, though she adds with a wry smile that her official position at the guild makes such a recommendation somewhat complicated. She listens as Mado expresses his gratitude, his hands clutching the book he nearly overlooked in his haste. He admits that without her help, he would have been lost, his voice carrying a note of genuine relief. Looking at him, she can't help but think how little he has changed, yet her mind drifts back to the mysterious seal from her vision. She wonders what hidden conditions must be met for such a lock to ever be released, her expression softening with a mix of affection and concern. As they move toward the exit, she instructs him to leave any future messages with the contact upstairs to ensure they find their way to her. He nods in agreement, accepting the arrangement as the heavy door creaks open. She leans in close, her voice dropping to a cautionary whisper as she warns him to stay vigilant. Even if he visits under the cover of night, she reminds him that unexpected incidents, like the one they just experienced, are always a possibility. After their farewell, he pulls his hood over his head and steps out into the cool air. She remains by the doorway for a moment, watching his retreating figure as he begins his journey back. He breaks into a light jog, his boots echoing against the stone walls of the narrow passage. The urgency of the night seems to push him forward, his mind likely racing with the weight of their conversation. Outside, the world is bathed in the silver glow of a full moon, casting long shadows over the quiet building. The stillness of the night stands in stark contrast to the revelations shared within those walls. Upon returning to his companions, he finds the energetic blonde knight dozing off, her head nodding as she slips into a light slumber. He quietly inquires about the status of the stolen goods, seeking to close the chapter on their recent troubles. He watches as Platina gazes fondly at her ring, noting its importance to her. He expresses his relief that she found it, while she offers a sincere word of thanks for his help. Turning her attention to her companion, she calls out to Risty, who remains slumped over and unresponsive. It seems the exhaustion, or perhaps the drink, has finally claimed her, leaving her in a deep slumber. She sighs, embarrassed that she allowed herself to be so affected by the alcohol. Seeing the situation, he suggests that since their business is concluded, they should move the sleeping woman to a bed, a plan she readily accepts. He carefully lifts the unconscious adventurer, mindful of his movements. Recalling the earlier warning about his own mysterious condition, he makes a conscious effort to carry her with dignity, avoiding any resemblance to a common kidnapper. With gentle precision, he settles her onto the bed, ensuring she is comfortable for the night. The room is quiet, save for the soft sounds of her steady breathing. As they prepare to leave the room, she pauses, her voice soft as she addresses him. Behind them, Risty remains lost in a peaceful, dreamless sleep. She expresses her deep gratitude once more, promising to repay the kindness he has shown. He simply waves off the gesture with a casual farewell, assuring her it was no trouble before stepping out and closing the door behind him. Outside, the night is still and the moon hangs high in the sky, casting a silver glow over the quiet town as the day's events finally come to a close. Mato settles into a cheap inn, relishing the rare solitude of a private room. He stares at the ceiling, contemplating the strange turn of events. He had fully expected to perish alongside the demon dragon, yet here he was, alive and alone, reflecting on how long it had been since he last had a moment of peace. He turns his attention to his meager belongings, a plan forming for the coming day. He decides to acquire tools for magic activation, eager to test his aptitude for standard spells, while acknowledging the necessity of locating a proper grimoire to further his studies. With a sense of anticipation, he settles under the covers, his mind racing with the possibilities of his recent victory. Having fended off a hobgoblin, he suspects his level has increased, and he wonders if he might awaken to new magical capabilities by the time he wakes. Elsewhere, under the glow of a full moon, the quiet of a stone-walled office is shattered by urgent cries from outside. A woman sits at her desk, the shouting for the guild master echoing through the night air as someone pleads for immediate assistance. She gazes out the window, her thoughts consumed by the man she recently encountered. It strikes her as remarkable that despite being a magic user, he possessed physical strength that surpassed her own, and she muses on how the news of the demon dragon's fall has yet to reach this remote region. Her mind drifts back to the image of him standing with his legendary companions, a thief who pushed himself to the absolute limit to save the world. She acknowledges him now as a true hero, her hand tightening into a fist as she struggles with the unexpected bond she feels towards someone she once vowed never to forgive. The door creaks open, and a subordinate enters, addressing her as the guildmaster. He brings word of a report filed by 3 junior members of the guild, interrupting her private reflections with the weight of official business. He continues his report, detailing a theft that has occurred, noting that the local guards remain unaware of the crime. He looks to her for guidance on how to proceed, while she remains silent, her expression clouded by the gravity of the situation. She remains calm as she addresses the report, confirming her awareness of the theft and the subsequent return of the goods. She instructs her subordinate to maintain surveillance without intervening, advising him to await further instructions from his direct superior. He bows respectfully and departs, leaving her to her thoughts. As he walks away, he marvels at her sharp intuition, noting how impressive it is that the guildmaster was already privy to an incident that had only just occurred. Meanwhile, in a quiet room, a young woman gazes into a mirror, her reflection revealing a face that seems unfamiliar even to herself. She sits on the edge of the bed, the weight of her recent actions pressing down on her. A sense of introspection takes hold as she questions the expression staring back from the glass, wondering what her true self has become. Later that morning, she makes her way through the bustling guild hall, a weary yawn escaping her lips after a night of little rest. As she approaches the counter, the receptionist greets her warmly, remarking on the significant impact she made during her very first day on the job. She quickly brushes off the praise, insisting that she was merely a passerby who happened to lend a hand to the 3 adventurers in need. The receptionist smiles knowingly, suggesting that the trio likely views her intervention as something far more substantial than a simple coincidence. Her gaze drifts toward the quest board, where the very group she helped is currently gathered. They are deep in discussion over their next objective, with the energetic warrior pointing out a request concerning a surge of plant-based monsters in the nearby fields. The group leader nods in agreement, recognizing the task as a large-scale extermination mission that will require their full attention. They stand before the quest board, their faces etched with a mix of determination and hesitation. The young witch notes that the task requires a party of at least 4, leaving them 1 member short. They glance around the bustling guild hall, wondering if any capable adventurer might be available on such short notice. As they discuss their predicament, a pair of boots clicks against the stone floor, drawing their attention. A voice cuts through their uncertainty, suggesting that while a trio is common, finding a fourth shouldn't be an impossible feat in a place like this. She approaches them with a calm greeting, catching the group off guard. Nanace, the paladin, immediately flushes with embarrassment, her mind racing back to the undignified display she made the previous day. The newcomer continues, explaining that after the assistance she received yesterday, she felt compelled to offer her own help in return. She admits that finding solo work has proven difficult, making this a mutually beneficial arrangement. Seeing their hesitation, she directly proposes joining their ranks for the upcoming quest. The trio looks on in silence, processing the sudden offer from the mysterious woman who had already left such an impression on them. Internally, she weighs the risks of her current disguise, knowing that while she must avoid the Thieves' Guild, a bit of visibility here might be manageable. She humbly mentions her level 1 status, expressing a slight concern about being a burden to the more experienced adventurers. This admission only fuels Nanae's protective instincts, as she boldly declares her duty to safeguard a novice sage. Beside her, the witch excitedly mentions a new potion brewed from slime, eager for their new companion to test its efficacy. Their energetic companion with the large ribbon teases them for their obvious excitement, suggesting they look as though they had been waiting for this very arrival. Humbly, the sage in disguise admits that while standard magic is currently beyond her reach, she is committed to contributing everything she can to the party's success. She asks to be included in their party, and the 3 adventurers warmly welcome her, introducing themselves and expressing their genuine pleasure at having her on board as their newest member. As she joins, a strange sensation washes over her, accompanied by a mental notification that a lock on her abilities has been released, granting her access to a new level of power through a seal release. Sensing her momentary distraction, the others check in on her, wondering if something is wrong, though she quickly brushes it off while privately contemplating why certain bonds have triggered these new abilities while others remain locked. Together, they approach the guild counter, where the receptionist confirms that with 4 members, they are now officially recognized as a party eligible to accept higher-level requests. Their official registration draws the attention of the other guild members, who whisper in envy and disbelief at the sight of a newcomer joining such a prominent and capable group. High above, the clear sky is marked by 2 intersecting trails, signaling the start of their journey. The group makes their way out of the city gates, stepping onto the open road as a unified team for the first time, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. As they walk, the energetic ribbon-wearing knight suggests they should come up with a name for their party to commemorate the occasion and solidify their bond. They begin debating potential names for their newly formed group as they walk. Nanae suggests the Silver Flash, a title she feels carries a certain weight, but Risty seems hesitant, wondering if such a name might be a bit too much for them. Continuing the conversation, Risty proposes the Moon Brigade, inspired by the brilliance of the lunar display from the previous night. While the sentiment is poetic, Nanae feels the name lacks a certain spark to truly define their collective spirit. Suddenly, the energetic warrior Platina interjects with infectious enthusiasm, suggesting Moonlight as the perfect compromise. The idea resonates instantly, and Nanae finds herself nodding in agreement, liking the rhythmic sound of the name. Watching from a short distance, the young man considers the weight of such titles. He realizes that while the names might feel a bit grand or even embarrassing to announce at first, they represent the beginning of their shared identity as a party. As they trek through the wilderness, the discussion shifts to even more elaborate titles like the Silver Sword of the Holy Seal. When Nanae questions the necessity of a formal name, Platina clarifies that it is a mandatory requirement for guild registration and official records. Breaking from the group's forward momentum, she turns around with a bright smile and calls out Tomato. She wants to ensure he doesn't feel left out of their lively debate, inviting him to join the heart of the conversation. The 3 companions share a moment of genuine warmth and camaraderie. Their faces are lit with the excitement of their new journey and the bond they are quickly forming as they look back at their newest member. Seeing their smiles, he feels a sense of quiet determination. He thinks of the friends he left behind, like Farina, and acknowledges that this is a fresh start, a chance to build something new from the ground up with these people. He places his hand atop the others, a silent vow to walk this new path alongside his 3 companions. With their bond sealed, the group erupts in a joyous cheer, officially christening themselves as Moonlight and looking forward to the adventures that lie ahead. They stood before a tranquil countryside, where the rolling hills and stone bridge belying the danger mentioned in their quest. Platina reviewed the request, questioning if monsters could truly haunt such a peaceful village, while the others looked on with varying degrees of skepticism. He cautioned the group to remain vigilant for plant-based threats and suggested they consult the client first. Unbeknownst to them, a massive, thick vine began to uncoil from the lush greenery behind their position. Without warning, the foliage erupted into a chaotic tangle of reaching limbs, Risty and Platina were hoisted into the air, their cries of shock echoing as the predatory vines coiled tightly around their bodies. She found herself similarly ensnared, the weight of her heavy plate armor making her an easy target for the constricting plants. Mado watched the unfolding catastrophe, his mind racing as he realized the sheer scale of the ambush. They struggled against the unnatural grip, but the vines were relentless. Risty gasped as she felt her very life force being drained away, while Nanace cursed the impossible strength of the wooden bonds, and Platina demanded her release with fading breath. He remained at a distance, surveying the grim scene where his companions were now completely cocooned in thick, pale webbing. The complexity of the entanglement made a clean rescue difficult, as any strike risked hitting the captives. With a sudden burst of speed, the sage lunged forward, his blade flashing as he identified a critical opening. He struck with precision, severing the primary vines that held his allies captive in a single, fluid motion. He urged them to fall back immediately, leading the disoriented trio away from the writhing mass of vegetation. As they reached a safe distance, he glanced back, relieved to see that the strange forest entity was not pursuing them. He stands with the others, examining the strange, limp vine that remains of their attacker. The group ponders if this was truly a plant monster, noting its resemblance to a common turnip leaf, though far more leathery and perverse in nature. Looking at the specimen, the young magic user suggests that these leaves could be brewed into a potion to recover the strength they lost during the struggle. He watches her with a hint of trepidation, silently hoping he won't be the one forced to test such a dubious concoction. He adjusts his hood, his mind already moving past the immediate danger as they prepare to continue their journey. Behind him, his companions gather their belongings, the tension of the ambush slowly beginning to fade into the afternoon air. As they trek across the open fields, the conversation turns to the bizarre nature of their foes, wondering if ordinary vegetables are somehow being transformed into monsters. One of the women remarks on the incredible force of the plant's grip, noting that they might have been in real trouble if not for the timely intervention of his thrown coins. He gazes down at a simple coin resting in his palm, reflecting on his new reality. While he can still use currency as a makeshift projectile without issue, his transition to the Sage class has made handling any weapon he lacks proficiency in feel clumsy and unnatural. His introspection is interrupted by a distant shout as a woman calls out to them from the path ahead. The woman waves enthusiastically, identifying them as the adventurers she was expecting. Though the order of events feels slightly backward, the group decides it is best to speak with the client directly to understand the full scope of the task at hand. They approach a sturdy, two-story farmhouse nestled quietly among the rolling hills and tilled earth. It is a peaceful scene that belies the strange, predatory flora they encountered only moments ago on the outskirts of the property. Upon reaching the porch, they are greeted by a woman named Alimira and her young daughter, Marino. The group offers their own introductions in return, with Risty presenting the team, Platina, Nanace, and finally the young man who stands at the back, his quiet presence anchoring the diverse group of travelers. He sits quietly as Alimira begins her tale, explaining that her family has farmed this land for generations. However, a dark change has taken hold. The very crops they rely on have begun to transform into aggressive monsters that strike without warning. Because of this sudden blight, Alimira recounts how her father was the first to be targeted, suffering an attack while shielding her from a monstrous, bulbous creature. The follower of Iris finds the notion of a vegetable specifically targeting women to be utterly disgraceful. As the story unfolds, Alimira and her young daughter, Marino, are overcome with grief, mourning the loss of their livelihood and the corruption of their fields. The gathered adventurers watch in silence, sensing the weight of the family's despair. Seeking a deeper cause, the energetic follower of Iris leans in and asks Alimira if there is any reason why the vegetables would suddenly turn into such abominations. In response, the woman explains that her people have always lived in harmony with the land, performing an annual ritual to honor the earth's spirit in gratitude for its bounty. However, she admits with a look of deep shame that they have recently failed to satisfy the spirit's requirements, leading her to believe they have incurred its divine wrath. Hearing this, the trio of adventurers ponders the nature of the earth's spirit, noting that while it can bring prosperity to the soil, it is equally capable of bringing ruin if its favor is lost. Finally, the sage weighs the options, considering whether the spirit must be subdued or if a peaceful negotiation is possible, before asking Alimira to clarify exactly what has gone wrong with their sacred ritual. He listens as Alimira explains the predicament. The ritual requires a certain number of participants, and the earth spirit has specific tastes that they currently cannot satisfy. Stepping forward to offer a solution, Shiska asks if it would be acceptable for their group to serve as substitutes for the missing ritualists. This offer is met with overwhelming gratitude, as Alimira and young Marino clasp their hands together, their eyes shining with newfound hope as they confirm the group's willingness to help. The room erupts into a flurry of activity as the villagers scramble to gather the necessary ceremonial attire, while Shiska inquires about the specific nature of the rite they are about to perform. As Alimira beckons the women of the party to follow her for preparations, Mato remains seated, questioning if he should simply wait there while the others get ready. Left to his own devices, he settles into a chair as the door clicks shut, the sudden silence of the room a sharp contrast to the previous excitement. A moment later, he is provided with a warm beverage, and, after taking a contemplative sip, he finds the flavor surprisingly pleasant. Gazing out at the quiet fields, he notes the absence of any further monster activity, wondering if the creatures only manifest when people draw near, or if there's a more unsettling pattern to their choice of targets. He waited patiently in the room until Alimira finally entered, offering an apology for the delay. Noticing the absence of his companions, he inquired about the whereabouts of the other three. Because the journey to the ritual site was significant, she explained that they would be traveling by horse-drawn carriage. She then requested that he take the reins and act as their driver for the trip. This request seemed to catch him off guard, prompting a look of mild suspicion. Sensing his hesitation, she quickly tried to downplay the situation, waving her hands dismissively while insisting there was no ulterior motive. Moments later, as he sat alone, a sudden commotion erupted from the adjacent room. A voice cried out in distress, claiming a sudden flare-up of a chronic ailment had rendered them completely unable to move. Inside that room, the three women were grappling with the reality of their ceremonial garb, which offered far more exposure than protection. While one urged the others to proceed without her, another lamented the lack of defensive utility in such a flimsy outfit, their voices rising in a frantic debate over how to proceed. Hearing the chaos from the hallway, Alimira looked increasingly troubled, her expression clouded with guilt. She tentatively suggested that perhaps the entire request should be cancelled if the situation was becoming too difficult for them. In response to the mounting silence and uncertainty, he approached the door and gave a firm knock. He called out to the group, asking if everyone was finally prepared to depart. The door swung open to reveal the trio huddled together, their faces flushed with deep embarrassment as they stood in their revealing ritual attire. Though they claimed to just need a moment to steady their nerves, and one even rationalized that being seen by the sage was acceptable, he could only stare in silent bewilderment at the unexpected sight. He reflects on the nature of his sage title, clarifying that it doesn't imply he has reached some higher state of enlightenment, despite what the name might suggest to others. Having reached their destination, the group disembarks from the carriage. The women, still draped in their concealing white cloaks, step out onto the grassy field near the ancient site. They approach the weathered stone altar, a monument dedicated to the earth spirit that has clearly stood for generations, its surface etched with the passage of time. As they prepare, Alimira explains the procedure, handing him a large drum and instructing him to simply maintain a steady, basic rhythm to accompany the ceremony. She elaborates on the tradition, describing how the women are meant to dance before the altar to the sound of the music, all while wearing the specific ceremonial garments she holds in her hands. The sheer audacity of the attire, a set of incredibly skimpy, dark strings, leaves the local women flushed with shame, though they nervously justify it by claiming the ancestral spirits would surely appreciate such a display. Startled by the revelation, he turns back to Alimira and Marino, questioning if they were truly the ones who had offered to demonstrate the ritual first in such revealing clothing. The two women can only offer a sheepish, stuttering apology, their faces burning with a mix of duty and intense personal embarrassment. She remains flustered as the silver-haired warrior leans in with a playful, knowing smile, her eyes sparkling with mischief. The warrior suggests that perhaps the others intended to let the villagers handle the ritual alone while they remained comfortably in their everyday attire. With a hint of teasing, she questions if they were trying to maintain a sense of dignity by avoiding the revealing ceremonial clothes. Her playful teasing causes a stir among the villagers, who begin to tremble and cry out in a mix of shock and duty. From beneath her hood, the silent observer watches this frantic display, noting that they are even resorting to special techniques to manage the situation. Her gaze narrows as she considers the presence of the men, deeming them unnecessary, but ultimately deciding to simply enjoy the spectacle that is about to commence. She stands solitary against the vast, open landscape of the ritual site, her cloak billowing slightly in the wind. Suddenly, a low, rhythmic thrumming vibrates through the air, catching her attention. Her head tilts as she catches the sound of a distant voice, a premonition of impending trouble clouding her thoughts as the atmosphere shifts. Enju sits by a large drum, her hood pulled low as she contemplates the task ahead. She asks if she really has to take off her cloak, her voice small and filled with reluctance. Mato watches from a distance, while she pleads with him not to look her way, her resolve wavering at the thought of what comes next. She looks up as a voice asks if she is finally prepared. The weight of the situation settles on her, the necessity of the ritual clashing with her desire to remain hidden beneath her heavy garments. Beside her, Farina and Platina have already donned the ceremonial attire, which consists of little more than ornate, revealing fabric that leaves them both flushed with intense embarrassment. Farina laments the skimpy nature of the clothes, wondering why ritual garments are always so small, while Platina tries to hide her discomfort, grateful at least that she brought a protective charm. Seeing their hesitation, Alimira bows deeply, offering a sincere apology for the unreasonable request she has placed upon them. She explains that there is no escape now that they have come this far, jokingly suggesting that even if they tried to run, the fluffy attack of 100 sheep would surely bring them a very comfortable, eternal slumber. The woman continues her explanation, detailing how the ritual to appease the earth spirits requires music and dance. She describes how women must perform before the altar in these specific ceremonial robes to ensure the spirits are properly calm. She further reveals her own background, noting that she is a bard by trade and used to perform in the theaters of the entertainment city in her youth. Though she spends her days as a shepherd now, she offers to play the flute and lead the musical accompaniment for their performance. After she finishes her explanation, Mado is tasked with manning the large drum. The instruction is clear. He will provide the rhythm while the others perform the sacred dance, a prospect that clearly leaves the women feeling exposed and uneasy. As he takes his place, Platina speaks up, clarifying to Alimira that while they originally arrived on a quest to subjugate plant monsters, they understand that performing the ritual to soothe the earth spirits is the only way to address the true cause of the problem. They commit themselves to the task, despite the embarrassing nature of the required attire. Farina, dressed in a revealing ceremonial garb, leans in with a warm smile to encourage the two younger adventurers. She explains that since they're the ones who know the ritual best, they must take the lead, gently reminding them that hesitation simply won't do. She continues to reassure them as they respond with bashful stammers, clearly uncomfortable with the minimal coverage of their new attire. Her voice remains soft as she asks them not to think ill of her for the age difference or the nature of the task at hand. One of the girls steals a glance at the knight's impressive physique before looking down at her own modest frame, a silent comparison that leaves her feeling somewhat inadequate. She is soon joined by the automaton Enju, who observes the group with her usual clinical detachment, noting that while Shiska possesses a surprisingly lush figure for an elf, Farina's own form remains undiminished despite her rigorous training. She concludes that her own petite, mechanical stature is perfectly suited for her specific functions. While she continues her analysis, Mado watches from the sidelines, his gaze lingering on the group until he is caught by the young adventurer. He quickly tries to play it off, suggesting that if he says too much, he might end up as a test subject for one of their potions, though he can't help but admit that the outfits suit them quite well. She blinks in surprise at his unexpected compliment, a faint blush creeping onto her cheeks as his words sink in. As she processes the unexpected praise, the energetic follower of Iris chimes in, her voice full of genuine admiration as she tells the girl she looks just like an angel that has descended from the heavens. The others join in the praise, noting how the light seems to catch the ceremonial fabric. They listen as Shiska nods in agreement, her expression serene as she remarks that everyone's unique traits are something to be cherished. Turning her attention back to the task at hand, she asks Mado if he is ready, signaling that it is finally time for the ritual to begin. She leads the group in prayer before the ancient stone monument, the silence of the plains only broken by the soft rustle of the wind. As the ceremony begins, the rhythmic beat of a drum and the high, clear notes of a flute rise into the air, setting the pace for the sacred rite. Watching the proceedings, the automaton senses the very atmosphere shifting as the earth spirits begin to resonate with the music, while the silver-haired warrior stands ready with the ceremonial banner. With the music swelling, the dancers begin their intricate movements, their bodies swaying in a choreographed plea to the spirits of the land. They continue the exhausting performance, every step and gesture meticulously executed to ensure the ritual success under the watchful eyes of the unseen spirits. Suddenly, a booming voice emanates from the stone altar, addressing the humans and declaring that if they wish to soothe its wrath, they must perform this dance 5 times every single day. The group freezes in disbelief, noting the voice sounds strangely like a child's, as the spirit further demands the presence of 3 specific girls to make the festival truly lively. They exchange worried glances, realizing that such a demand is impossible to meet. Agreeing to these terms would be no different than abandoning their lives as adventurers entirely. She and the others listen as the spirit's voice echoes from the altar, granting them until the following day to decide. The entity warns that without a favorable response, the ritual they performed will lose all significance. As the sun hangs over the distant mountains, a lone bird glides through the quiet air, marking the heavy silence that has fallen over the hilltop. Breaking that silence, Alimira sinks to her knees, her head bowed in shame as she offers a sincere apology for the impossible burden she has placed on them. She blames herself for the spirit's wrath, feeling the weight of the responsibility for their current predicament. Her hands press into the dry earth as she continues, her voice trembling with the realization of how truly furious the spirit is. Desperate to make amends, she insists that they shouldn't worry about the payment for the quest anymore. However, the hooded automaton steps forward, her gaze steady as she reminds the distraught woman that their contract is not yet fulfilled. She refuses to let the mission end on such a defeatist note. Turning her attention back to the stone structure, Shiska wonders aloud if there might be something hidden within the altar itself. The group gathers around the ancient stone, considering the possibility of a physical interior. This line of questioning triggers a memory for Alimira, who recalls her father's warnings about the land's history. He had once told her that the man who first cleared this area strictly forbade any digging beneath the altar, fearing it would provoke the spirit's true rage. Processing this information, the mechanical girl concludes that the altar is merely a conduit. She suggests that the actual essence, the true body of the earth spirit, might be residing deep within the hill itself. She proposes a risky gamble, suggesting that by entering the structure's interior, she could negotiate with the earth spirit directly. As the group looks on in disbelief, she points out a nearly invisible keyhole hidden within the intricate dragon relief on the stone surface. She then inquires if any legend mentions a physical key, but the woman shakes her head, admitting she has never heard of such a thing and fearing that without one, the spirit will remain out of reach. With a calm confidence, the hooded figure reassures her companions that she has a way to bypass the lock. He observes the mechanism closely, a sense of familiarity washing over him as he realizes the keyhole is identical to the one on the treasure chest they encountered previously. Through his unique perception, he understands that his specialized tool is the only thing capable of turning the lock. She turns back to the group, reminding them that dealing with an earth spirit is no small matter and urging them to be certain of their choice. Despite the danger, the woman pleads for her to go ahead, her desperation for a solution outweighing her fear. The woman continues, explaining with a hint of shame that the local farmers used to assist with the sacred rituals, but the humiliating nature of the required attire eventually drove them away. This lack of support is what finally pushed the situation to its current breaking point. They stand together in a moment of tense silence, the weight of the decision hanging heavy in the air as they prepare for what comes next. The hooded girl remains focused, her gaze fixed on the stone barrier that stands between them and the spirit. He steps forward with a determined expression, signaling that the time for talk has ended. With a brief word of intent, he prepares to reveal the means to unlock the path forward. He produces a slender, glowing object that pulses with an ethereal light, drawing a surprise comment from the priestess who notes it looks more like a rod than a traditional key. As he holds the artifact, he reflects on its unique nature, certain that such a specialized tool is exactly what is required for this ancient lock. He stands firm as the ancient stone structure groans and shifts, the heavy sound of grinding rock echoing through the clearing. Behind him, the companions he has gathered watch in silent anticipation as the path finally begins to reveal itself. His efforts cause the dust to settle, revealing a complex geometric pattern etched into the stone floor that begins to hum with a faint, dormant energy. At its center stands a solitary stone pillar, the focal point of the massive mechanism they have just unearthed. Turning back to them, the young sage questions whether they are all prepared to proceed, even offering to venture ahead alone if the risk is too great. The knight, however, stares at the sheer scale of the device, her expression a mix of awe and trepidation at the ancient power before them. Hearing his offer, they quickly dismiss any notion of staying behind, their voices filled with a mix of bravado and determination. The trio of adventurers argues that facing such unknown dangers is the very essence of their calling, patting their weapons and shields to show they are more than ready for whatever lies ahead. Listening to them, the high priestess steps closer to the glowing lines and identifies the array as a sophisticated teleportation circle, a relic she had only ever encountered in the dusty pages of ancient texts. Hearing this, the leader issues a stern warning, telling everyone to keep their hands to themselves once the transition is complete to avoid any unforeseen magical mishaps. As he finishes his instructions, the woman and her young daughter bow deeply, their faces etched with a profound sense of gratitude. They offer their heartfelt thanks to the group, promising that such a debt of kindness will not be forgotten. Accepting their gratitude, he approaches the central pillar, his hand hovering just inches from the cold stone. A flicker of doubt crosses his mind as he wonders if the ancient machinery will still function as intended after so many centuries of silence. The moment his palm makes contact, a blinding flash of white light erupts from the pillar, surging through the etched lines of the circle. In an instant, the world around them dissolves into a brilliant radiance as the teleportation magic takes hold. They are suddenly thrust through space, the teleportation circles magic, tossing them like ragdolls. Shouts of surprise echo as the world blurs around them in a disorienting flash of light. The transition ends abruptly as they tumble onto a hard stone floor, limbs tangling in a chaotic heap as momentum carries them forward. As the dust settles, the group struggles to regain their bearings, their faces etched with the shock of the rough arrival and the strange new environment. He finds himself at the very bottom of the pile, pinned under the weight of his companions. Farina and Alimira scramble to get up, their faces flushed with embarrassment as they realize the awkwardness of their landing, while Shiska urges everyone to stay still for a moment. Once they're all back on their feet, the conversation turns to their appearance. Shiska suggests they should have changed into more appropriate attire before the journey, but Alimira counters that their current outfits might actually help them avoid offending any local spirits or mechanisms. He sighs, adjusting his gear while trying to regain his composure. The embarrassment of the fall lingers, and he resolves to finish this task as quickly as possible to maintain his dignity as a sage, feeling a bit pathetic for being so easily rattled. Their attention is soon drawn to the massive chamber they now occupy. The sheer scale of the ancient ruins is breathtaking, with towering stone walls that have somehow remained intact through the ages, leading them to wonder if they are deep beneath the hill. To pierce the gloom of the cavernous hall, she produces a small vial. Explaining that it is a light potion crafted from luminous moss extract, she prepares to illuminate their path forward into the darkness. She stands with the others before a grand, ancient mural, pondering if this is the altar of the earth spirit and the site of the ritual they had heard of. Examining the carvings more closely, the group notices two distinct figures, one large and one small, and wonders if these representations depict the spirits themselves. As they study the altar, the hooded automaton warns the party to remain vigilant for traps or hidden foes, just as a heavy mechanical click echoes through the chamber, followed by an ominous rumble. Realizing the danger, the knight cries out a warning as the very walls of the corridor begin to grind inward, threatening to crush anyone left behind. Amidst the sudden panic, one of the adventurers stumbles, her foot wedged firmly into a groove in the shifting floor as she cries out in terror. Seeing her companion in peril, the automaton commands the others to flee while she hoists the frightened girl onto her back, urging her to hold on tight. They race through the narrowing passage, the mechanical girl's speed surprising even the thief as the stone walls close in with terrifying momentum. With a final, desperate surge of effort, the group leaps through the shrinking gap, narrowly escaping the crushing weight of the ancient trap as it seals shut behind them. She and the rest of the group are whisked away at breakneck speed as Mato sprints into a vast, open chamber, his feet pounding against the stone floor to reach safety. He skids to a halt, still clutching the three women, and urgently asks if everyone is all right. The sudden stop kicks up a cloud of dust, marking the end of their desperate flight. They begin to recover from the harrowing dash, catching their breath. Platina admits she was terrified by the ordeal, while Shiska notes that they only survived because of Mato's incredible speed. Enju remains quiet, admitting she is poorly suited for such chaotic situations and often finds herself caught in them. He informs them that he's going to set them down now that the immediate danger has passed. They look toward the path ahead, their expressions a mix of relief and apprehension as they prepare to face whatever lies deeper in the ruins. Together, they step through a glowing archway, the brilliant light momentarily blinding them as they transition into the heart of the ancient structure. They find themselves staring in awe at a massive presence looming in the shadows. Shiska wonders aloud if this is the true form of the earth spirit they have been seeking, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and reverence. A colossal stone golem looms over them, its voice booming through the chamber like grinding rock. It acknowledges their arrival, calling them children of the earth, and poses a final, chilling choice. Will they choose negotiation or combat? The group stands before a massive stone sentinel, their presence having drawn the attention of an ancient entity. A disembodied voice resonates through the chamber, addressing them as children of the earth and expressing a cold surprise at their intrusion into this sacred space. They watch as he bows slightly, offering a respectful apology for their unannounced entry. The spirit dismisses the need for apologies, instead questioning if he has successfully secured the key. His gaze falls upon the ancient altar, and a realization strikes him. The artifact he presumed lost was here all along, waiting to be claimed. He contemplates the nature of the seal, suspecting that conventional magic might be useless against the power of this altar. A deeper thought takes hold. Perhaps his unique sage's key magic is a force unknown even to this ancient entity, a hidden advantage in a place where normal rules do not apply. His companion steps forward to represent the group, addressing the earth spirit with a formal request for aid. The spirit invites them to speak their wish, but its tone turns ominous as it mentions that an offering has already been presented to the altar. She watches as he reacts with immediate concern, questioning if the spirit implies that they are to be the sacrifice. Behind him, the others exchange uneasy glances, the weight of the spirit's words settling heavily upon them as they realize the danger they are in. He hears the voice boom with newfound authority, declaring that they are forbidden from leaving the chamber. It warns that any attempt to resist will be met with the overwhelming power of Mother Earth, and the very ground beneath their feet begins to tremble violently. Its power manifests as the massive stone construct suddenly lurches to life, towering over the group with menacing intent. The spirit's voice challenges them, asking what their next move will be now that the path is blocked by this ancient guardian. It looms over them as they quickly assess the threat, noting that an earth golem is far beyond anything that should be encountered in this region. The realization is grim. This is not a foe that low-level adventurers can hope to defeat in a direct confrontation, and they are trapped. She questions the terms of their predicament, asking if victory over the construct will grant them their freedom. Beside her, the knight adds a demand of her own, insisting that the strange transformation of the local flora into monsters must also be reversed. The disembodied voice of the spirit responds with a chilling playfulness, agreeing to consider their requests simply because it finds them cute. It mockingly encourages the young man to do his best as the massive stone entity looms before them. Suddenly, the golem lunges forward with a deafening roar, its massive stone fist shattering the ground where they stood. The sage warns his companions that mere knowledge of such creatures is useless against this level of raw power. In a desperate bid to halt the assault, the woman with a large ribbon steps forward, extending her hand and commanding the beast to stand down. To everyone's shock, the behemoth actually freezes in its tracks, its glowing eyes dimming for a fleeting moment. The sage watches in disbelief, wondering if her unique abilities can truly bridge the massive gap in their levels, even as he shouts for her to retreat to safety. However, the pause is short-lived as the golem's form begins to shift, sprouting numerous stone appendages that lash out like tentacles. It ensnares her, its movements becoming disturbingly precise as it pins her against the cold stone floor. She struggles against the crushing grip, her face flushed with a mix of exertion and indignation at the creature's invasive touch. Despite the overwhelming strength of the stone hands, she refuses to yield, even as the sage realizes that conventional blades will have little effect on such a dense, magical construct. Seeing their comrade in peril, the rest of the group springs into action, charging toward the shifting mass of rock. The sage bellows a command for them to keep moving, knowing that any hesitation will mean certain doom in the face of the spirit's relentless guardian. He braces himself as the massive stone construct slams its fists into the ground, sending tremors through the cavern. Beside him, the others struggle to maintain their footing against the sheer force of the golem's assault. Looking up at the behemoth, he realizes that their current attacks are barely scratching the surface, noting that reaching the core with simple coins or blades is proving nearly impossible. Farina and Risti exchange a grim look, acknowledging the stalemate. The golem looms over them, its silence punctuated only by the mocking voice of the earth's spirit echoing through the chamber. The spirit suggests that if they intend to surrender, now would be the most opportune moment before things escalate further. Refusing to back down, he rallies his companions, insisting that they each have a specific role to play in this fight. He declares that if they combine their strengths and execute their plan perfectly, victory is still within their reach. Taking his words to heart, Farina charges forward with her shield raised, shouting a challenge to draw the golem's attention away from the others. She positions herself as the primary target, her armor gleaming in the dim light. The massive construct responds to her provocation, shifting its weight with a heavy thud as clouds of dust erupt from its joints. It seems to take the bait, focusing its immense power on the lone knight. However, the distraction is a double-edged sword, as a sudden burst of movement catches the group off guard. Risti gasps in confusion as the golem's tactics shift unexpectedly, bypassing their defenses in a blur of motion. Before they can react, stone appendages lash out like whips, ensnaring both Farina and Risti in a crushing grip. They struggle against the cold, unyielding rock, Farina cursing the golem's humiliating and bizarre method of restraint. She and her companion remain trapped, the cold stone of the golem's tentacles tightening around them as the massive construct looms. Desperate, the ribbon-haired warrior commands the beast to stop, but her pleas are met only with the mocking, ethereal voice of the earth's spirit. It condescendingly notes that while they fought well for mere humans, their efforts were ultimately immature and futile. Suddenly, a shadow falls from above as the young thief descends, his eyes fixed on the stone giant. He acknowledges the golem's strength, but prepares a countermeasure, focusing his magical energy into the blade of his sword with the same precision he once used on a simple coin. With a decisive strike, he plunges the empowered blade deep into the golem's shoulder, the magical resonance vibrating through the stone. The spirit within the construct gasps in disbelief at the overwhelming force, unable to comprehend how a human could possess such power. Mado simply remarks that he has undergone his own rigorous training before offering a final, cold apology as the core begins to fracture. The massive entity disintegrates, collapsing into a harmless mound of rubble as the young man steps away, his task complete. He pauses to reflect on his growing abilities, realizing that while he once relied on the High Priestess to locate such vital points, he can now sense the core's position through his own intuition. Having been released from their stony bonds, the two women approach their savior with profound gratitude. Risty credits his swift swordsmanship for their lives, while Farina quietly contemplates the grim fate that would have surely befallen them had he not intervened. She leans heavily on her sword, catching her breath as the immediate danger of the golem subsides. Nearby, the hooded figure who intervened stands calmly, his presence a stark contrast to the chaotic battle that just concluded. She pulls her companion close, her voice trembling with relief as she expresses her gratitude that they were reunited after being so cruelly separated in the darkness of the dungeon. As the dust settles, the young witch approaches the group, her eyes wide with disbelief as she stares at the pile of sand that was once a towering construct, questioning how such a feat was even possible. He raises a hand to halt her advance, his gaze fixed on the altar as he warns that their business with the ancient spirit is far from finished. From the depths of the stone, a voice resonates, admitting its astonishment that a being of his caliber would be found in these forgotten depths, acknowledging his unexpected power. The spirit concedes the battle, begrudgingly promising to uphold its end of the bargain and cease the transformation of the local crops into monstrous threats. It muses on its tactical errors, specifically the vulnerability of the golem's core, and vows to refine its methods over the next century before a shimmering teleportation circle manifests on the floor, offering a way back to the surface. They stand together in the fading light of the chamber, a lingering sense of unease hanging in the air as they realize the true nature of the spirit's motivations remains a mystery. Yet the path home finally lies open before them. He stood in silence, the earth spirit's parting words echoing in his mind. There is a distinct loneliness in that voice, a realization that felt almost presumptuous to harbor towards such an ancient entity. As the group gathered, the conversation turned to the spirit's strange behavior. Farina noted that the entity seemed to find a peculiar joy in their struggle, leading him to wonder if the entire ordeal, the transformation of simple vegetables into monsters, was merely a desperate plea for attention born of centuries of isolation. He couldn't help but ask if a direct encounter with the spirit was truly impossible. Turning his gaze toward the massive, ornate doors at the end of the hall, he observed that they still hadn't located the spirit's physical manifestation. The mystery of what lay beyond those gates pulled at him. Upon closer inspection, he discovered a small, circular indentation near the door, a keyhole. Realizing the path continued further into the depths, he looked back at his companions, who immediately voiced their unwavering support to follow him wherever the trail led. With a determined nod, he produced the circular key, readying himself for whatever awaited them. Well then, he muttered, "Let's go." The moment he pressed the key into the slot, a blinding flash of light erupted from the mechanism. He recoiled slightly, sensing something was wrong as a strange sensation washed over him. Not a trap, but something else. Beneath their feet, a large magic circle began to glow with an ethereal light, illuminating the vast, empty chamber. He felt a sudden, sharp drain on his internal reserves, realizing that the mechanism was fueled by his own mana. Another magic circle had been activated, and it was greedily drinking his power to set the ancient machinery in motion. He rests on the cold floor of the ruins, the strain of the mana drain evident in his slumped posture. Farina kneels beside him, her voice heavy with apology for placing such a burden on his shoulders. She laments that her own mana is useless in this fight, wishing she could have given it to him instead, while the others look on with concern. Hearing this, the woman with the large ribbon suddenly stiffens, a look of sharp realization crossing her face. She corrects Farina, her voice gaining a new edge of confidence as she declares that there is, in fact, something she can do to help their weary companion. The warrior recalls a vivid dream from the night before, an ethereal memory of herself bathed in light. In that vision, a mysterious voice whispered that a lock had been opened, and a sudden, profound certainty took root in her mind that her capabilities had expanded beyond her previous limits. As she shares this revelation with the group, Farina and the others listen with rapt attention. Farina wonders aloud if this sudden insight is the result of a level increase. Try to make sense of the strange phenomenon that has granted their friend such unexpected confidence. She continues her explanation, recounting how the divine voice specifically mentioned that a technique called seal release was now at her disposal. She concludes that this must be a unique skill granted to her by a higher power, a specialized knowledge that has manifested just when they need it most. Turning her focus back to the exhausted youth, she explains that while she can assist him, the process requires a specific ritual. She asks for his patience and trust, warning him that the procedure might be unusual and asking him to endure whatever sensations it might bring. Without waiting for a formal answer, she reaches out and firmly grasps his hand. He flinches slightly, his eyes widening in confusion as he tries to process the sudden physical contact and the strange, burgeoning energy beginning to stir between them. The others watch in stunned silence as the ritual begins, their expressions a mix of shock and curiosity. Though he remains uncertain about the nature of this seal release, he yields to her touch, accepting that this mysterious intervention is their only way forward in these ancient halls. The weary traveler sits before her, questioning why he would doubt her now, but she insists she isn't so ungrateful as to abandon him in his time of need. Taking his hand firmly, she initiates the seal release, a hidden technique that begins to glow with a soft, ethereal light as the ritual commences. As the ritual takes hold, he can feel his latent strength being pulled to the surface, a sensation of raw power returning to his tired limbs. Nearby, the automaton watches in silent awe, realizing that this isn't just a simple spell, but a direct transfer of magical energy from one soul to another. This revelation sheds light on Platina's true nature. While she calls herself a holy knight, her actual calling is that of the Royal Order, a class destined to serve and empower those of noble standing. She closes her eyes, focusing on the flow of energy, understanding now that her purpose is to offer her own mana to her master, a feat she is only just beginning to master. With a grateful nod, Mado tells her it is enough, though the sudden influx of power leaves him momentarily unsteady as he tries to find his footing. The seal's effect finally dissipates, and as her unique ability is resealed, she looks slightly flustered, wondering if she might have misjudged the intensity of the transfer. She stands with her companions, the weight of her recent revelation still hanging in the air. Farina expresses genuine amazement at the unique capabilities of the Royal Order class, noting that such a mana transfer is a rare feat, however. The conversation takes a confusing turn when the requirement for Mado's technique is mentioned. Inju tilts her head in genuine bewilderment, wondering aloud who this person named Kiss could possibly be. The automaton considers the possibility that Risti might possess similar latent abilities, though the thought seems distant. She admits that while she has glimpsed such things in her dreams, the actual sensation of being able to perform the ritual remains elusive, leaving her feeling as though something vital is still missing. She becomes visibly flustered, her face flushing a deep crimson as she fidgets with her hands. In a soft, hesitant voice, she suggests that in such intimate circumstances, one should perhaps make a formal request, her embarrassment radiating from her as she struggles to maintain her composure. The hooded girl stares back with a flat, unimpressed gaze, her expression unreadable as she processes the suggestion. She simply nods, stating that she will make the request when the situation demands it, while her companion tries desperately to chant a mantra of inner peace to settle her nerves. The knight sighs at the cold, businesslike tone of the exchange, pointing out that such a clinical approach lacks any sense of delicacy. Her observation is met with a sharp retort, as the automaton counters that the knight's own way of phrasing things is equally problematic, leading to a brief, tense standoff between the two. She quickly moves to break the tension, raising her voice with forced cheerfulness to redirect their focus toward their next objective. Leading the way through the stone corridors, she announces that they should proceed to the new magic circle, leaving the awkward conversation behind as the group follows her toward the unknown challenges ahead. They stood before a surreal landscape, massive pillars stretching into the darkness of a cavern that defied logic. The group questioned their surroundings, wondering if they were truly deep beneath the earth and why the structures appeared to be suspended in midair. Among them, the young mage trembled, her face pale as she confessed a paralyzing fear of heights that made the precarious environment a living nightmare. Despite her terror, they began the long ascent, their footsteps echoing against the narrow stone staircase that wound around the colossal pillar. Finally, a single step landed on solid ground as they reached the summit of the towering structure. She collapsed slightly, her legs shaking uncontrollably from the ordeal, while her companion, the silver-haired warrior, seemed invigorated by the height, admitting a peculiar fondness for the tension of high places. Their arrival did not go unnoticed, as a voice drifted through the thin air, questioning how they had managed to penetrate so deep into this sanctum. In the center of the platform, a figure was revealed, bound tightly to the central pillar by heavy, rusted chains. The captive woman looked up, her expression a mix of confusion and despair as she wondered aloud if she had summoned the wrong people, while the adventurers realized with a start that they were standing before the Earth Spirit herself. She admits that while she's called an Earth Spirit, the title doesn't quite fit her nature, though she sees little point in denying it. Continuing her explanation, she reveals that she has forgotten almost everything about her life before arriving in this place, knowing only that she is bound and unable to leave this spot. When Enju questions the legends of her blessing the Miller family's lands, the spirit dismisses the notion of altruism, explaining she was simply bored and granted prosperity in exchange for being entertained. She recalls the vibrant festivals of the past, where maidens danced to music around a glowing altar, admitting that such displays of joy once made her own heart leap with excitement. Despite her youthful appearance, she claims to have lived hundreds of times longer than any of them, a fact that surprises Enju, who notes the discrepancy between her ancient soul and childlike form. Having shared what she can, she tells the group she has nothing left to say and offers to manifest a magic circle to return them to the surface. The companions exchange uncertain glances, but Mato remains focused, his expression hardening as he considers the spirit's plight. He steps forward to ask if her imprisonment is a sacrifice meant to ensure the land's fertility, but she quickly corrects him, stating that her chains serve no such noble purpose. He reflects on the nature of the land's prosperity, explaining that his previous intervention was merely a catalyst. The true strength to maintain the harvest came from the people themselves. Turning his attention back to the bound girl, he questions whether she is truly permitted to leave her post at the altar. She responds with a heavy resignation, explaining that the chains binding her are beyond the reach of any human's power, and she cannot even fathom the strength required to break them. Undeterred by her pessimism, he looks her directly in the eye and asks the only question that matters. Does she actually desire her freedom? The spirit's hand tightens into a fist as he probes deeper, suggesting that her mischievous acts, turning crops to monsters or prolonging festivals, were perhaps a desperate cry for something more. Risti steps forward, her voice softening as she suggests that the spirit's true motivation was simply a profound sense of loneliness. Looking out over the desolate altar where she has spent an eternity, the spirit admits to the crushing weight of her long isolation. With her head bowed and the chains rattling softly, she begins to voice a truth she has kept buried for centuries. She hung her head, the heavy chains rattling softly against the stone as she lamented her fate. As a being meant to be sealed away, she felt she had no right to harbor the complex emotions swirling within her, believing her very existence was a mistake. In response to her despair, the hooded youth suggested that if she felt guilt for her past actions, she should simply apologize to those she had inconvenienced, even the monsters. His companion with the large ribbon joined in, questioning why the spirit had chosen to use her vast power for the sake of people in the first place if she felt so unworthy. They watched as she looked up, her eyes wide with a flicker of hope as the woman continued her encouragement, insisting that the people would surely find it in their hearts to forgive her if she showed genuine remorse. Continuing her plea, she stepped closer and posed the ultimate question. What did the spirit herself truly desire to do, regardless of her past or her purpose? With a confident wink, she assured the captive that the young man beside her would undoubtedly find a way to help her achieve that desire. The spirit remained silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on the ground before she slowly raised her head, a new light of determination shining in her eyes. Moved by their words, she finally whispered her deepest wish, to be free and leave this cold, lonely place forever. As she spoke, the young man's sharp eyes caught sight of a glowing lock binding the chains, and he realized that if the mechanism was visible to his unique perception, it could be broken. Seeing her resolve, he reached out a hand toward her, his voice firm as he urged her to come to him. His companion watched with a mix of awe and concern, fearing he might once again push his magical reserves to their absolute limit to perform such a feat. Ignoring the risk, he focused his intent on the ethereal lock, unleashing a surge of power to shatter the ancient bindings and liberate the spirit from her long imprisonment. He has done it. The blinding light fades to reveal the earth spirit, now a small, fragile girl cradled in their arms. The heavy atmosphere of the altar begins to lift as the group gathers around their prize, witnessing the impossible result of his intervention. Looking down at his hands, he admits that even he doesn't quite grasp the mechanics of his own strength, only that he felt a pull to release what was bound. Risti watches him, her expression a mix of awe and newfound respect for the man who just defied ancient magic with such casual humility. They take a moment to breathe, sinking onto the cold stone floor as the immediate danger passes. Risti breaks the silence, noting with a weary smile that, against all odds, their gamble actually paid off and the spirit is finally among them. She continues to ponder the mystery of his abilities, questioning how a simple thief could possess a key capable of shattering divine chains. It is clear to everyone present that he is far more than he appears, and his role in saving the spirit was no mere fluke of luck. Nearby, the young mage Nanes watches him intently, sensing the residue of the lock-eye ability that just bypassed a high-level seal. She realizes that his very existence might be the catalyst they needed, as her own magical senses tingle from the lingering power of the release and the notification of a broken bond. With the spirit now safe, the group prepares to depart, deciding to utilize the shimmering magic circle the girl had prepared for their exit. They move with a renewed sense of purpose, leaving the dark altar behind as they step into the light of the portal. As they step away, the memory of the Earth Mother Goddess, Ursula, lingers in the air, a powerful deity reduced to a prisoner in such a desolate place. Outside, the moon hangs large and silent over the landscape, witnessing the first shift in the world's balance in centuries. Farina considers the weight of this discovery, whispering to Shiska that if he truly holds the white key, then other forgotten gods might still be waiting in the shadows. The priestess looks toward the horizon, her heart heavy with the realization that their journey has only just begun and the stakes have grown far beyond their initial quest. High above the mortal realm, the goddess Linares stands in a shimmering void as a celestial gateway opens before her. From a light, a peer of the divine steps forth, her presence radiating authority as she inquires if the time has come to begin preparations for the next phase of their grand design. She listens as Linares explains that the demon dragon Letitia has fulfilled her purpose and entered a deep slumber, prompting a discussion on whether to summon a new demon king entity. However, the newcomer expresses a desire to further refine the hero Farina, viewing her as an incomplete but promising divine vessel. As they walk through the ethereal landscape, the mysterious goddess warns that humanity is a fickle race that quickly forgets the terror of a threat once it passes, growing weak in times of peace, and insists that a replacement for the dragon must be readied soon to satisfy their master's expectations. The mysterious goddess places a hand on her shoulder, noting that not all entities possess the same level of reason as their previous pawn, and suggests that a renewed threat will inevitably force the humans to rely on their hero once more. Looking down upon the world below, she watches the mortal group from afar, her thoughts consumed by the mysterious sage power Mato displayed, realizing she must uncover the true nature of this unexpected variable. Far below the celestial heights, the silver light of the full moon bathes a quiet farmhouse, where the sounds of battle have finally been replaced by the stillness of the night. Inside the warm glow of the home, Alimira and her daughter Marino busily serve a magnificent feast to the weary travelers, who laugh and eat heartily, momentarily oblivious to the divine eyes watching their every move. She watches with a warm smile as Farina savors the meal, the night marveling at the flavors and calling them a true blessing of the earth. The food seems to melt on the tongue, a testament to the bounty they've gathered. After the meal, the mother and daughter stand near the ancient stone altar, the air thick with a presence that only they seem to fully grasp. Nearby, the high priestess sits quietly, prompting a concerned inquiry about whether a simple cup of water is truly enough to satisfy her. She assures them that pure water is all she requires, her gaze then drifting toward the young girl, whom she recognizes as the manifestation of the earth's spirit itself, though the child seems slightly different than expected. The conversation shifts as the mother praises her daughter's recent dance, noting how impressive the performance had been. Hearing this, the priestess adds with a gentle smile that a maiden's dance is a beautiful thing, admitting that she herself draws a certain spiritual energy from such displays. This revelation causes the knight to pause, wondering aloud if their own life force was being drained, but the priestess clarifies that while the altar serves that purpose, the effect is far too negligible to cause any actual fatigue. The knight and the others listen intently as the priestess turns the question back to them, asking if they are comfortable with this arrangement or if they have grown fearful of her true nature. She watches as the spirit reflects on the past, recalling a time when she was bound by the weight of the villagers' worship. What began as a tribute eventually became a heavy burden that drove her to make impossible and cruel demands of those who revered her. In response, the mother and daughter offer only kindness and understanding. The elder woman insists that the prosperity of their land is a direct gift from her, choosing to overlook the pain her father suffered and instead expressing deep, heartfelt gratitude. The spirit softly disagrees with their praise, closing her eyes as she credits the bountiful harvests not to her own divine power, but to the relentless effort, sweat, and dedication of the people who worked the land themselves. She is now manifested in a physical form, sitting among them at the table and reaching out to touch the woman's arm in a silent gesture of connection. The family beams with joy at this touch, the mother expressing that meeting her in person is a profound honor and that her ancestors would have surely shared in the grace of this miraculous moment. A sudden clarity washes over the spirit as she realizes that it was their unwavering kindness and lack of resentment that allowed her to finally break free from her corruption and remember her true purpose. She introduces herself with a gentle smile as Ursula, the true name of the Earth Spirit, though she invites them to call her by the simpler, more intimate name of Ulu from now on. The tension that once gripped the household dissolves into a shared moment of peace and mutual respect. She accepts the new dynamic with a gentle nod, agreeing to drop the formal titles as requested. Since she is the one being looked after now, the group insists on a more familiar name, and she happily settles on being called Ulu. Following this moment of bonding, the other companions introduce themselves properly. Platina, Risti, and Nanes share their names, solidifying the growing circle of allies around the young spirit. Amidst the introductions, Platina admits her general distaste for men, yet she makes a rare exception for the young man standing among them. She gives him a friendly pat on the shoulder, acknowledging his unique status in her eyes. He beams with pride at the recognition, clearly moved by being called sage. Nearby, his longtime companion watches his reaction with a mix of amusement and exasperation, noting how easily a bit of flattery can sway him. Later, the group seeks relaxation in the manor's expansive bathhouse. The sound of rushing water fills the room as Platina sinks into the warmth, feeling the day's fatigue wash away in an instant. As they settle into the steaming water, the women marvel at the sheer scale of the facility, noting that such a grand bath is a rare luxury for a private home. The atmosphere is one of hard-earned peace and quiet reflection. Joining them in the water, the young spirit explains that locating such a natural spring was a simple task for her. She speaks of her connection to the earth, noting that while such places aren't everywhere, they are easily found by those who know how to listen to the ground. Suddenly, she rises from the water, her small form beginning to radiate a soft, ethereal light that catches everyone off guard. The sheer magnitude of the power dwelling within her becomes visible, leaving her companions breathless as they witness the true nature of the spirit they have befriended. She basks in the warmth of the water, observing her companions with a playful curiosity. She remarks on how humans possess a certain charm when they are bashful, suggesting that even her master might find such a sight captivating. She watches as the others exchange puzzled glances, questioning if she was truly meant to join them in the communal bath. In response, she simply clarifies that by master, she is referring to Mado. She continues her explanation, her voice calm as she details how he was the one who finally granted her freedom. To her, acknowledging him as her master is only natural given the debt of liberation she owes him. The tension softens as the group accepts her presence, with the women kindly offering to help wash her back. They note how they often perform this small service for one another, welcoming her into their intimate circle. Meanwhile, far from the steam and chatter of the bathhouse, the young thief sits in the quiet solitude of his room. He stares intently at his open palm, his mind heavy with the mysteries of the white key magic. Despite everything that has transpired, the true nature of this power remains an enigma, a puzzle he has yet to solve. He reflects on how magic was infused into his blade, much like the enchanted coin he carries. It is a stark reminder that he must continue to train, honing his ability to manipulate and control the raw magical energy flowing through him. The realization that his spirit companion is missing suddenly pulls him from his thoughts. He remembers her mentioning they would bathe together, yet he finds himself entirely alone, wondering when she managed to slip away. While he remains in his room, the atmosphere in the bathhouse is one of quiet intimacy. Platina gently washes Ursula's long hair, earning a soft word of thanks and a compliment on her skill. Seeing the two bond, Farina inquires if Ursula has ever performed such a service for her master. The question causes a brief, playful splash as the spirit reacts with surprise to the suggestion. She continues, noting how deeply Ursula seems to appreciate Mado. The steam rises around them as they soak in the warm water, the conversation turning toward their shared connection to the young man. In response, the spirit explains that her devotion stems from a profound moment of liberation. She feels that he was the one who truly opened the door to her heart. As the conversation deepens, Farina begins to indicate about Ursula's nature, but the spirit interrupts with a calm revelation. She is, in fact, female. The knight is momentarily speechless, realizing her assumptions were incorrect. With a mischievous glint in her eye, she adds that if the others aren't careful, she might just decide to take Mado all for herself, hinting at a hidden depth to her feelings. This bold declaration leaves them stunned. They exchange looks of disbelief, wondering if they have just gained a formidable rival for the young man's affections. Outside, the moon hangs high over the quiet building, the peaceful night belying the new romantic tension brewing within the bathhouse walls. Night falls over the quiet village, the stone buildings standing silent under the stars as the day's adventures come to a close. As the stars emerge, the interior of the lodge buzzes with activity as Risti pulls the young earth spirit, Ulu, into a tight embrace, insisting that they all sleep together tonight. He watches from the doorway as the group of girls shuffles toward their room, their playful energy filling the hallway as they prepare to retire for the evening. The young spirit turns back to him, addressing him as master with a bright, mischievous smile. He tries to correct her, suggesting she just... Closing the door behind him, he finds himself alone in the quiet of his own quarters, the silence a sharp contrast to the lively scene moments before. His mind wanders back to the shared bath earlier, questioning the propriety of his presence among them despite his youthful appearance. He thinks of Mabel and the complicated nature of his current situation, eventually deciding that overthinking it will lead nowhere. He reflects on the strange calm that has settled over him, attributing his composure to the sage's blessing as he prepares to turn in for the night. Exhausted from the day's heavy use of magic, he settles into the soft blankets, knowing that sleep will come quickly and deeply. While he rests in his own quarters, the women of the party gather in their shared room, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating their quiet preparations for sleep as they settle onto the beds. One of them notices Platina's distant, contemplative gaze and asks what has been troubling her so deeply since they arrived at the lodge. She quickly hushes her companions, her face flushing a deep red as they remark on her unusual behavior and press her for an explanation she isn't ready to give. Despite her attempts to feign sleep and hide her face beneath the covers, her companions remain observant, noting the obvious distress and heat radiating from her cheeks. Her mind drifts back to the heat of the battle against the golem, specifically the unexpected and intimate moment she shared with Mato that now leaves her heart racing in the quiet of the night. The memory of the kiss, though born of tactical necessity in the moment, now fills her with a paralyzing sense of bashfulness as she wonders how she is supposed to face him tomorrow. Seeing her face turn a deep shade of crimson, her friends suggest that perhaps her reaction is only natural, given that he is someone they have all come to trust implicitly during their journey. Another companion chimes in, admitting that she too has felt a strange, lingering sensation since they left the ruins, leaving them all to ponder the growing complexity of their bond with the sage. She reflects on the moment Mato drew out her power, noting that while it was a necessity, it left her with a lingering, restless sense of embarrassment. She admits that since that event, she hasn't been able to settle down, feeling a strange sensation that she can't quite put into words. Hearing this, the young woman in the witch's hat turns to their companion, asking if such a feat is common for someone of the paladin class. She wonders aloud if being able to use such techniques is a standard ability for someone with Platina's background. She responds with a silent, firm nod, her expression turning serious as she acknowledges the question. The knight then reveals that her true designation is Royal Order, explaining that while the details remain a secret, the act of transferring mana is a fundamental part of her role. She suggests that, given her specific duties, it isn't at all strange for her to share her magical energy with others. Surprised by the admission, the short-haired girl asks if they aren't angry about the secrecy, but her friend simply watches with a calm, knowing curiosity. She shakes her head with a soft smile, clarifying that as an apothecary, she holds no ill will. She explains that in her profession, there are many people who rely on her skills and find themselves in similar positions of vulnerability. Continuing her thought, she mentions that the world of medicine is vast and complex, sometimes crossing paths with shadowy organizations or unlicensed practitioners who operate in the fringes of society. This talk of duty does little to soothe the knight, who clutches her head in a fit of bashfulness, declaring she can no longer face Mato. Her friend watches with a smirk, teasing her that her case of embarrassment is truly severe. She sits on the edge of the bed, her face flushed as Nanes leans in close. Nanes can't help but comment on the sheer, lacy nightgown Platina is wearing, teasingly suggesting it's quite provocative. The young woman stammers a protest, insisting that such things shouldn't be said aloud. She looks away, wondering privately if such revealing attire is simply the norm in this part of the world, her embarrassment clear in her furrowed brow. Their conversation is interrupted as their companion joins them, standing before the bed in an even more daring outfit. The other two can only stare in stunned silence at the sheer lack of modesty. She seems completely oblivious to their shock, tilting her head with a look of innocent confusion. From the sidelines, her friends whisper to each other, noting that she has always lacked a certain level of self-awareness when it comes to her appearance. As the night deepens, they decide it is finally time to rest. Despite the lingering awkwardness, they settle into the large bed together, though the silver-haired knight still wonders aloud if there is truly something strange about her choice of sleepwear. Soon, the room falls quiet as the three women drift off into a shared slumber. The moonlight filters through the window, casting a soft glow over the peaceful scene of the trio huddled together under the covers. Even in the depths of sleep, her mind remains restless. She finds herself haunted by thoughts of the young man she left behind, her heart heavy with a mixture of longing and a strange, gnawing sense of guilt for the feelings she harbors. Far from the quiet intimacy of the bedroom, the morning sun begins to rise over the majestic spires of the Verdal Holy Kingdom. The sprawling city awakens, unaware of the personal struggles and growing bonds of the travelers within its walls. The news of the demon dragon's defeat spreads through the halls of power. Officials discuss the necessity of rewarding the hero, Farina, perhaps with status or land, to keep her tied to their interests. Away from the political maneuvering, the quiet grounds of the Laurier Marquiate, the headquarters of the Night Order, offer a stark contrast to the bustling palace. On a secluded balcony, She sits in silence, her back to the world as she stares out at the horizon. The heavy silence is broken when a voice calls out her name, Farina. Shiska enters the room carrying a tray of food, gently urging her friend to eat something. Farina, however, remains lost in her own despair, clutching her sword and questioning the very purpose of her survival. The priestess explains that she is alive because that is what Mato wanted. This only deepens Farina's grief. She laments how Mato always prioritizes others over himself, and she confesses the crushing weight of responsibility she feels for the current state of affairs. As they reflect on the battle, Farina admits her feelings of utter helplessness. She regrets that she was unable to stop the curse of death from taking hold when the demon dragon fell, feeling that she failed Mato at the most critical moment despite him shielding her. Her hands tremble as tears finally spill over. She confesses a newfound fear that haunts her. She used to be unafraid of death, but now, the thought of it terrifies her, leaving her feeling weak and compromised. She is overwhelmed by grief, but Shiska firmly interjects, insisting that she must never speak such words. Shiska explains that if she denies the value of her own life, then the sacrifices made for her will have been in vain. Looking away, the priestess reflects on the nature of the deity they encountered, noting how the goddess merely bestowed rewards on her own terms without ever truly listening to their pleas. With Mato gone and Inju having returned to her proper place, she realizes the weight of responsibility now resting on her shoulders. She is the only one left to keep the night from falling apart. Standing together on the balcony as a gentle breeze stirs the air, she makes a firm proposal. They must set out to find him. She suggests a lead, wondering if perhaps his hometown might hold the answers they seek. The night remains haunted by the memory of him dying in her arms, struggling to reconcile that image with the fact that he simply vanished, leaving it unclear if the dragon's curse truly claimed him. Turning back toward her companion, the priestess offers a glimmer of hope, questioning if it isn't possible that he was simply teleported to another location. She gently urges her friend to eat, reminding her that they need their strength to find him and that he would surely tease her if he saw her in such a state. She sits across from Shiska, listening as the priestess explains that Mato would never laugh at her, having always watched over her with the protective care of an older brother. Her gaze drops to the table, the weight of the realization settling in as she admits that such a perspective had never even crossed her mind during their time together. Because it is Mato they are speaking of, Shiska remains certain of his kindness, his image appearing in their thoughts as a reminder of the steadfast bond they all shared. Later, the focus shifts to the town's sturdy stone gates, where the morning light catches the high watchtower overlooking the peaceful landscape beyond the walls. Near a waiting carriage, the group gathers to say their goodbyes, with Alimira expressing her deep gratitude for the assistance they provided in getting them safely to this point. She and her daughter, Marino, offer a heartfelt thanks to the trio of adventurers, though Risti quickly counters that they were the ones who were overpaid for such a simple task. The mother apologizes for the trouble caused by her unofficial request, but then adds with a warm smile that the experience made her feel as though she had gained an unexpected daughter in Risti. This sentiment brings a soft smile to those gathered as they finalize the plan to leave Ursula in the care of Alimira's family, confident that she will be well looked after in their home. She stands quietly as the priestess offers a gentle warning, advising her not to push herself too hard and to keep her husband's injuries in mind. Following this advice, the two women share a confident smile, reassuring the group that they are well prepared and have everything they need for the journey ahead. As they radiate such positivity, the young man watches them in silence, his mind racing with thoughts about the mysterious release of the bond limit and what it truly signifies for their connection. Seeing his contemplative look, the priestess turns her attention to her companion, teasingly suggesting that her own wealth of experience might make her a rival for the young girl's affections if she isn't careful. This playful banter is quickly interrupted when a young man tries to speak up, only to be sternly told by the priestess that such inappropriate topics have no place in public conversation. With a lighthearted moment passing, he turns to the young girl, encouraging her to go visit her father while promising that he will return to check on the spirit they are leaving behind. Just as they prepare to move on, the priestess suddenly lunges forward, wrapping her arms around the hooded automaton in a surprise embrace. Holding her close, she whispers a vow of constant vigilance, declaring that she will follow her chosen master's lead, her eyes reflecting a deep, newfound resolve. She explains that they're going to pay their respects to Marino's father. Farina watches her with a look of mild suspicion, noting that such a gaze is hard to bear. Lost in a pleasant daydream, she imagines how Mato might handle a meeting with her own father. She muses that even the most stubborn parent would likely soften under his earnest greeting. Turning the conversation toward her companions, she casually remarks that she hasn't heard anything about their own families. The question causes both the knight and the automaton to stiffen visibly, caught off guard by the personal inquiry. The hooded girl quickly shifts her gaze, insisting that she is perfectly content with their current life of adventure. She warns the thief not to pry into their pasts, even as she admits to a flicker of curiosity herself. Sensing the sudden tension, he offers a sincere apology for the secrets he has kept from them. He stands before them, his back turned as he acknowledges the weight of his hidden history. She dismisses his apology with a bright smile, asserting that such things don't matter to them. To her, they are far more than just a band of adventurers. They have become true friends, and she admits to being perhaps a bit too bold in her affection. Her words hang in the air, prompting a moment of stunned silence from the group. They watch as their leader makes a small, contemplative gesture, his usual stoicism momentarily wavering. A soft chuckle escapes him, a rare sound that draws their immediate attention. She is genuinely surprised, noting that while he is always composed, she never expected him to laugh in such a warm, human way. He remains the subject of their light-hearted concern as Shiska observes his overly serious nature. She suggests to Farina that they should practice their smiles together, though Farina seems less than enthusiastic about the idea. Inju watches silently, noting that while she won't join the practice, she doesn't mind observing, as Farina actually looks like she's having fun. As the group continues their journey, the young witch from the trio they encountered earlier teases him about his distant, thoughtful expression, jokingly threatening to draw on his face if he doesn't snap out of it. He offers a sheepish dismissal, while nearby, the energetic follower of Iris beams with a radiant, carefree smile. The moment of levity carries them to the gates of the guild house, where the reality of their duties returns. A voice calls out to him, urging a quick report of their recent findings, reminding them all that even in a world of adventure, there are formalities to be observed. At the guild counter, the receptionist is visibly impressed as she reviews the records. She notes that Risti's group, the Moonlight Troupe, has managed to complete their request in just 1 week, despite being given a 2-week deadline, and praises their efficiency. She hands over the reward, explaining that because their work was so exemplary, a bonus has been added to the initial amount. The group stands together, satisfied with the successful conclusion of their task and the extra coin in their pockets. To finalize the monster subjugation record from the farm, she requests to see their guild cards. The young witch of the group complies immediately, sliding her identification card across the smooth wooden counter for processing. As the transaction concludes, a hand rests firmly on the counter, signaling a shift in the atmosphere within the bustling guild hall. Nearby, a group of veteran adventurers is in an uproar, their faces contorted with jealousy as they curse the newcomer's luck for working alongside such high-ranking women. Risti, hearing the commotion, turns with a casual greeting, noting the coincidence of meeting them there while they continue to grumble in frustration. Suddenly, a familiar face appears with a confident wave. It is Brand, who announces that he has also just finished his own work and is now looking for a more challenging blue card level job. He is met with a blank stare from the group until Risti admits she can't quite place him, asking who he is. Mado, however, manages to recall the name, tentatively identifying the knight as Brand and breaking the awkward silence. He watches as Farina speaks with newfound determination, declaring that the group will strive to reach the prestigious blue card rank as quickly as possible. In response, Brand explains that those who hold such cards are considered the elite of the guild, and he offers to lend his expertise to help them build the necessary reputation. However, Shiska immediately cuts him off with a firm gesture, stating that such assistance is entirely unnecessary. Joining her, Inju clarifies that they are managing their current assignments perfectly well on their own and have no need for outside guidance at this stage. Accepting the rejection with a knowing smirk, Brand muses that it is natural for the young to be overconfident in their own abilities, and he decides to respect their independence for the time being before calling for his attendants to depart. As the armored knight turns to leave, the group remains silent, their resolve unshaken even under the watchful eyes of the other adventurers in the hall. The sound of retreating footsteps echoes through the room as a voice offers a quiet apology for the disruption. Stepping forward to smooth over the interaction, the elder advisor introduces himself as Melvin, the butler for Brand's party, alongside the maid Dorothea. He offers a formal apology, explaining that while Brand's offer lacked malice, it was certainly presumptuous. Melvin goes as far as to suggest that they should not feel pressure to indulge the young master's whims and encourages them to continue being firm with him in the future. Observing the exchange, Inju realizes that these two are far more than simple attendants. They function as the knight's supervisors and educators. She watches as the butler, Melvin, engages Farina in conversation. He expresses surprise that she isn't familiar with the Shweek name, explaining that the family has only recently arrived in this city. Farina seems taken aback by the weight of the name, questioning if it's truly all right for them to be so casual with such high-ranking nobility. As the conversation continues, the maid, Dorothea, interrupts to summon her colleague. Melvin responds with a grunt of acknowledgement, his professional mask momentarily slipping as he prepares to depart. With a final, formal bow, the two attendants bid the group farewell, offering a prayer for the goddess's blessing to be upon them. The adventurers stand together, watching the pair retreat through the heavy doors. Once they are alone, Farina observes that the old man was clearly more than a simple servant. Shiska agrees, noting that the maid's poise and movements were equally impeccable, suggesting a level of training far beyond the ordinary. Breaking the contemplative silence, she offers a rare word of encouragement, telling her companions that they have grown truly strong and that she is relying on them. The unexpected praise leaves Farina and Shiska momentarily stunned, their cheeks flushing with a mix of surprise and pride. Their moment of reflection is cut short when the guild receptionist calls out to them from across the hall. Her voice carries a note of uncertainty that immediately draws their attention back to the business at hand. Looking down at the parchment in her hands, the woman's expression turns grave as she points out a troubling detail. She explains that the request is marked with red letters, a designation reserved for high-threat targets like the Earth Golem mentioned in the report. The group leans in, their confusion evident as they ask for clarification on the term. The receptionist confirms their fears, stating plainly that the red ink is a warning of a formidable foe, one that demands an evacuation order for the surrounding area. She listens intently as Enju explains the situation regarding the Earth Golem and its connection to the recent monster sightings in the vegetable fields. Enju confirms the beast's defeat with a calm nod. The news ripples through the guild hall like a physical shock, leaving the receptionist stammering in disbelief, while nearby adventurers gape at the group that just took down a red-letter threat. Consulting her records, she notes that such a creature is typically reserved for those at level 15, with level 20 being the standard for a safe encounter. As the trio of adventurers discusses their own perceived growth, she offers her congratulations. She reveals that because their leader, Risti, has reached level 5, their guild cards will undergo a transformation. They receive their new blue cards, staring at the symbols of their advancement with a mix of pride and wonder. He, however, stares down his own card in grim silence. Despite the monumental victory, his status remains stubbornly at level 1, leading him to ponder if his recent job change demands a far greater toll of experience or some hidden criteria he has yet to meet. Breaking his train of thought, the receptionist announces that a special reward is due for the elimination of a red-letter target, essentially treating the monster as a high-value bounty. She details the offer from the city council. The group is invited to become permanent citizens of fortune, complete with a leased residence, as the city hopes to retain such capable individuals without forcing them into mandatory service. She ponders the group's arrangement, her brow furrowing as she considers the social implications of 3 women and a single man sharing a residence. To her, the term cohabitation carries a weight that seems to catch the group off guard, and she questions if this is truly the path they wish to take. This suggestion causes a sharp intake of breath from the knight, whose face flushes a deep crimson at the mere mention of such an intimate living arrangement. Beside her, the hooded automaton remains silent, though the atmosphere in the room has shifted palpably under the weight of the receptionist's observation. Stuttering over her words, she tries to clarify that while they are indeed a party, living under the same roof isn't a requirement, though her frantic gesture suggests she is more flustered than she'd like to admit. She insists that communal living isn't a necessity, even as her companions watch her struggle to maintain her composure. Sensing the tension, the receptionist smoothly pivots, offering alternative rewards such as enchanted equipment or even formal introductions to the local nobility. She presents these options with a professional smile, giving the group a moment to reconsider their choice and perhaps find a less scandalous reward. Despite her earlier embarrassment, the knight regains her resolve and confirms that they will accept the housing offer, deciding it will serve as their primary base of operations while they remain in the city. She smiles warmly, the prospect of a stable home finally outweighing her initial hesitation and the social awkwardness of the situation. With the decision finalized, the official produces a pair of keys, handing one to the knight while noting that the second is intended for the young man. He looks on with a mix of surprise and uncertainty, realizing the permanence of this new arrangement as the metal clinks softly in the knight's hand, cementing their shared future. Outside the guild, the news of their good fortune triggers a wave of dramatic despair among the less successful adventurers, who wail at the heavens in bitter jealousy. They cry out in anguish, unable to bear the reality of a group receiving both a house and duplicate keys, their voices echoing through the streets in a chorus of envy. Ignoring the commotion behind them, the knights suggest they head to their new home immediately, her excitement clear. However, the young man pauses, raising a hand as he mentions a small request he still needs to address before they depart, momentarily halting their progress toward their new life. He listens as the young woman with the large ribbon presents a small vial, explaining it contains slime essence recovered from a goblin's hoard. She asks for his assistance with a brief experiment, and though he seems slightly hesitant, he agrees to help. Following this agreement, the group begins to move through the city streets, the weight of their new responsibilities and the upcoming experiment hanging in the air. Seeing the detour ahead, The knight and the priestess decide to split off, suggesting they head to their new residence, first to inspect it while the others finish up. The priestess reflects privately on the trials the young man must have endured with past experiments. Away from the bustling city, the scene shifts to a tranquil riverside where a fish leaps from the water, the distant silhouette of the castle standing tall against the horizon. In a quiet forest clearing, the young man stands with the girl, now wearing a wide-brimmed hat, as she prepares a small cauldron. He notes that pharmacists often utilize slimes for a variety of purposes, a fact she readily confirms. As she stirs the pot, she explains that while slimes are magical beings, a skilled pharmacist can synthesize them provided they have the correct ingredients. She proudly adds that this particular method isn't found in any textbook, having developed it through her own independent research, a feat that leaves the distant priestess deeply impressed. She beams with a sense of accomplishment, asserting that despite appearances, she is quite the diligent student of her craft. Even from afar, the priestess seems to acknowledge her hard work while contemplating the essence in the vial. He then questions the mechanics of her trade, asking if the recipes a pharmacist can master are strictly tied to their experience level, and if she has reached the threshold required to safely manipulate slime essence. The question seems to catch her off guard, leaving her visibly flustered and uncertain. She dismisses his concerns with a playful smirk, insisting that they won't know the outcome until they actually try. He presses further, asking about the consequences of failure. She admits that in the worst-case scenario, the mixture could explode, prompting him to suggest she increase her level before attempting such a volatile synthesis. Startled by his blunt suggestion, she cries out for him to wait, her face contorted in a comical display of protest. Leaning in uncomfortably close, she confesses that despite the risks, she feels a surge of confidence as long as he is by her side, leaving him flustered and struggling to maintain his personal space. As they stand by the water's edge, he questions if simple water and slime essence will suffice for the creation. She explains that to craft a truly unique slime, more specialized ingredients are required. To illustrate her point, she produces a small pouch containing earth golem sand, explaining its utility in imbuing the creation with the essence of the earth element. He observes that the sand indeed seems to pulse with terrestrial power, yet she remains hesitant, admitting that while the ingredients are technically correct, she still feels as though a vital component is missing. Clutching the materials tightly, she reiterates her belief that his presence is the key to their success, though her intense gaze leaves him feeling more than a little overwhelmed. She reaches out, her hands steady as she prepares to combine the final components for the synthesis. Beside her, the witch watches intently, the air thick with anticipation as the ritual begins. With a precise movement, she uncorks the small vial, the liquid inside shimmering with latent magical energy that seems to pulse in time with her own heartbeat. As the process begins, she feels a sudden, sharp drain on her mana, her expression tightening as the energy is pulled from her. The witch asks what is happening, sensing the intensity of the ritual, and she realizes that this immense consumption of power is the final requirement to complete the complex recipe. Together, they pour the essence into the large vessel, and a brilliant, blinding light erupts from within. She watches with wide eyes, her heart racing as the raw magical power begins to take shape amidst the swirling energy. Looking down at the glowing pot, she breathes a sigh of relief, acknowledging that her own mana would have been insufficient without the support she received. She declares the synthesis a success, her face lit with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. From the light, a small, simple slime emerges, only to rapidly expand and shift its form. It grows into a large, translucent humanoid figure, towering over them. The sudden transformation startles the onlookers, the sheer scale of the creature far exceeding their expectations. She tentatively asks the creature if it can adjust its appearance to look as though it is wearing clothing. In response, the slime's surface ripples and hardens, molding itself into the form of a powerful warrior woman clad in organic, stone-like armor. Mado observes the new being, noting that the inclusion of the earth golem sand has granted it the ability to manifest such a durable, protective shell. The creature stands ready, a silent testament to the successful fusion of magic and rare materials. He leans in, questioning the newly formed creature to see if it possesses any level of comprehension. To his satisfaction, the stone-clad warrior offers a slow, deliberate nod, confirming it can understand his words. Encouraged by this display of intelligence, he challenges the entity to demonstrate its strength with a single punch, noting that the sheer presence it radiates rivals that of a formidable earth golem. The creature draws back its fist, gathering its immense power. The resulting blow is cataclysmic, shattering the earth and sending a violent shockwave through the clearing as dust and debris erupt into the air. As the dust settles, he surveys the massive crater, marveling at the fact that such a newly created being can already exert such devastating force. Nearby, the young witch watches in silence, perhaps realizing that this power is now hers to command. He turns to her, emphasizing that as the slime's master, its future growth and actions now rest entirely on her shoulders. She absorbs this truth, the weight of her new responsibility visible in her quiet demeanor. Seeking to forge a deeper bond, she proposes a name for her new companion, suggesting AMU as a shortened form of its origin. The creature repeats the name softly, its voice a low rumble as it processes the concept of an identity given by its creator. Suddenly, it reaches out and pulls her into a firm, protective embrace, acknowledging her as its master. He and the others look on, witnessing the birth of a profound new loyalty. It clings tightly to its creator, its hunger for mana seemingly insatiable. Mato winces as he feels his energy being drained away, shocked by the sheer volume of power the creature is consuming. Nanace watches the exchange, her expression a mix of concern and fascination at the bond forming between them. Seeing the strain on her companion, she quickly intervenes, pulling the small creature away. She scolds it gently, warning that it mustn't take any more for now, as the little slime's enthusiasm had nearly exhausted its source of sustenance. It reverts to its simple, round form, looking quite content despite the scolding. Nanace muses that if they can raise its level and increase its strength, it might be able to maintain its more powerful transformations for longer periods. She reflects on the strange, new sensation of responsibility, feeling almost like a mother to the burgeoning spirit. With the excitement of the day winding down, they decide it is time to return home and recover. The exhaustion of the mana drain weighs heavily on them, and the quiet walk back offers a much-needed moment of peace after the intense testing of their new ally. Elsewhere, within the cold stone walls of a command center, a high-ranking knight reviews a series of urgent reports. A subordinate delivers a message from the guildmaster of Aiku, prompting her to immediately order a messenger to be dispatched. Her thoughts linger on a specific name, one that carries both weight and mystery: Mato, or as he is known in certain circles, Crow. The group arrives at a sturdy two-story house, their designated new base. Mato expresses his surprise at the quality of the building, considering it was provided at no cost. Beside him, the young witch explains that this location serves as their secret headquarters. He and the others are greeted by the energetic woman with the large ribbon, who proudly announces that she has already finished tidying the interior. She stands ready to welcome her companions to their new living quarters. He then turns his gaze toward Nanace, immediately noticing a peculiar change in her presence. With a mix of curiosity and concern, he asks what has happened and if this is the outcome of one of her magical experiments. She blushes slightly, adjusting her large hat while admitting that, despite the oddity of the situation, she finds her current state surprisingly comfortable. Suddenly, a small, round creature leaps on her head, settling itself firmly atop her witch's hat. The others look on, startled by the sudden appearance of the gelatinous guest. This round, gray entity is an armed slime named AMU. It stares back with simple, dot-like eyes, appearing far more docile than its name suggests. Delighted by the outcome, the woman with the ribbon reaches out to pat Nanace on the head in congratulations. The young witch pouts in response, grumbling that she's not a child and doesn't require such patronizing gestures. As the group begins to settle in, the conversation turns to the practicalities of their stay. They discover the house contains only 2 double bedrooms, necessitating that some members share a room. Mato stares at the beds, a look of deep concern crossing his face as he contemplates the awkward sleeping arrangements. He watches as Risti confidently declares that, as the eldest, she has no objections to the shared quarters. Nanace quickly follows suit, expressing her own comfort with the plan. Despite their reassurances, he can't help but feel that Risti, at the very least, deserves the privacy of her own room. Turning to Nanace, he questions if she truly doesn't mind the lack of space. She beams, reminding him that they are all comrades who shared the trials of the experiment together. Beside her, the little slime, AMU, bounces happily, seemingly in agreement with the sentiment of unity. With the living arrangements settled for the moment, the group sets out from their new home, the atmosphere light and cooperative. As they walk, they begin to divide the day's chores. Nanace, eager to test the new kitchen, suggests a trip to the market for supplies. Risti immediately volunteers to accompany her as a porter, while the witch decides to stay behind to inspect the house's facilities and begin the necessary cleaning. Soon, the trio finds themselves amidst the vibrant chaos of the local market, where the air is thick with the scent of fresh produce and the shouts of competing vendors. Navigating through the crowd, he asks Risti if her enthusiasm for the market stems from a talent for cooking. She admits to possessing a basic cooking skill, though she sheepishly notes that it might seem an odd pursuit for someone dedicated to the path of the sword. Their search leads them to a well-stocked vegetable stall, where a robust woman greets them warmly. She calls out to the cute adventurers, asking what she can provide for their journey. As the vendor begins to weigh their selection, she remarks on their youthful appearance, wondering aloud if such a young pair can handle the rigors of their profession. Risty listens intently, her expression unreadable as they prepare to gather their supplies. She eyes the vibrant Muron fruit as the vendor boasts of their seasonal sweetness, promising a flavor that is currently at its peak. Intrigued by the recommendation, she decides to purchase 4 of them, though the merchant adds a playful warning about not staying up too late after consuming them. As the group begins to walk away, the vendor calls out a friendly farewell, inviting the young adventurers to return to his stall again soon. Walking back in silence, she reflects on how Mato has proven himself far more reliable than his youthful appearance suggests, but her train of thought is suddenly broken by a subtle movement in the shadows. A small, discreet signal reaches her, and she immediately recognizes the hallmark of the Thieves' Guild, wondering if this is a direct contact from their leader. The message is brief and clandestine, instructing her to meet the guild master at a location known as Falcon 19, strictly outside the guild's usual territory. This unusual request for a private meeting weighs heavily on her mind, leaving her to speculate whether the master seeks a formal consultation or a more personal favor. Back at their base, she watches Risty humming contentedly while expertly preparing their meal, marveling at how naturally the warrior has taken to these domestic tasks. While she was preoccupied with her own summons, Risty called out to Mato nearby, asking if he could take a look at the bath. The energetic woman explained that she was attempting to heat the water using a magic tool, while he approached the external mechanism of the building to investigate the issue. He identified the diamond-shaped device and decided to test whether his unique skills would be effective on such a magical contraption. Placing his hand near the lock, he attempted to channel his mana into it, even as Risty complained from the other side that the water remained freezing cold. He activated his lock-eye ability to perceive the internal structure of the heating tool's lock, wondering if he could force the mechanism to engage despite not having the proper key. His efforts were rewarded as the device began to glow, prompting a joyful cry from the bath as the water finally began to warm up to a comfortable temperature. The successful manipulation of the magical lock triggered a sudden surge of power within him, signaling that he had reached a new level of mastery and acquired a fresh technique. Observing this development, the elven priestess contemplated the nature of their growth, speculating that for a sage, the timing of a level up might be directly tied to the volume of magic power expended. She and the others gather around the table, enjoying a hearty meal. Risty beams with pride as everyone digs in, the atmosphere warm and domestic. Having taken a few bites, he expresses his genuine surprise at how delicious the food is, complimenting Risty's skill. She modestly attributes the quality to the fresh vegetables she received from Alimira. As the conversation continues, she clarifies that her culinary talent isn't just luck. She used to practice cooking extensively as a hobby. He listens, impressed by this unexpected side of the woman known as the Silver Flash. Moments later, she presents a plate of sliced fruit for dessert, her expression cheerful as she offers the sweet treat to the group. Without hesitation, he and the others begin to sample the fruit, the vibrant colors promising a refreshing end to their meal. While he savors the perfect level of sweetness, the young automaton observes that this particular fruit has properties that accelerate mana recovery. She muses that it could even be used as an ingredient for new medicines. Suddenly, a strange sensation washes over him, his body feeling uncomfortably warm as the mana begins to circulate. He questions the potency of the fruit, wondering if he should have secured a larger supply despite the intense reaction. Nearby, she offers a piece of the fruit to the small slime, who happily consumes it, seemingly unaffected by the potent magical energy that is currently surging through its master. She and Risty decide that Mato should head to the bath first while they take care of the washing up. He agrees to the arrangement, though he feels a slight pang of guilt for leaving the chores to them. Having accepted their offer, he relaxes in the steaming water, noticing with a start that the scars he carried before his class change have completely vanished. He muses that his appearance has changed so much that his old companions might not even recognize him now. His thoughts drift to his long-term goals, to grow stronger as a sage and eventually reunite with Farina and the others. He hopes that one day, the entire Moonlight Troupe can stand together once more. However, a sense of unease settles in as he contemplates the disparity in their progress. While his companions have reached levels 4 and 5, his own sage level remains stubbornly low, making him worry that he is the only one falling behind. He also considers Risty's mysterious nature, suspecting from her refined mannerisms that she might be of noble birth. He wonders if their current group is truly capable of breaking through to the next tier of challenges. As he ponders whether Farina will ever make her way to the City of Fortune, the sound of the door latch clicking interrupts his solitude. Soft footsteps approach across the tiled floor, drawing closer to the water. To his utter astonishment, Risty and Nanes appear, draped only in modest towels. Risty meets his gaze and calmly asks if they might join him in the bath, showing no sign of hesitation. He can hardly find his voice as they approach the water's edge. Risty dismisses his shock with a smile, reminding him that as members of the same party, there is no need for such modesty between them. He sits frozen as the women approach. Risty, her skin flushed, mentions how her body feels strangely hot and that a soak is exactly what she needs to settle down. Nanace follows, her expression vacant as she notes that Mato appears to be seeing double. Beside the water, a small basket of peaches sits untouched. Nanace rubs her forehead, wondering if just two of them will be enough to handle the situation, or perhaps she is simply overwhelmed by the heat. The young man's eye widens in sheer disbelief. He struggles to comprehend the meaning behind their sudden, bold intrusion into his private moment. Eventually, the group settles into the steaming water. While the three women relax and exhale in relief, he huddles in the corner, his face turned away in a desperate attempt to maintain some semblance of modesty. Breaking the silence, Risty remarks on how much better this private bath feels compared to the crowded public ones. Meanwhile, he feels his pulse racing, realizing with a start that his path of retreat has been completely cut off. She continues, her voice softening as she admits how truly grateful she is that he decided to join their party. He remains silent, his back still turned, unsure of how to respond to such earnestness in such an awkward setting. She explains that while they are still inexperienced, he has a way of drawing out their true strength. Nanace watches him closely, thinking to herself that she considers him an incredible person every night before she drifts off to sleep. As the conversation deepens, they begin to edge closer to him in the water. He lets out a startled yelp, his composure finally shattering as the proximity becomes too much to bear. He freezes as a strange, ethereal glow suddenly manifests before his eyes, catching him completely off guard in the middle of the bath. This phenomenon triggers his passive lock-eye ability, revealing a hidden layer of reality. While he usually sees white locks on objects and beings, he now discovers a second, distinct red lock etched onto the skin of the women before him, a mark unlike anything he has encountered previously. As the two women lean in closer, their proximity only heightens the intensity of the glowing marks, leaving him paralyzed by the discovery. The atmosphere in the steaming water becomes heavy. Nanace appears dazed, her eyes unfocused, prompting Risty to check on her well-being with a concerned whisper. Outside, the moon hangs high over the quiet inn, but the silence is broken by his desperate plea for them to reconsider the sleeping arrangements, his voice echoing faintly into the night as he realizes the absurdity of three people sharing such close quarters. Despite his protests, he finds himself sitting on the floor of their shared room, staring at the bed where the others have settled in for the night. He lies there, staring at the ceiling with wide eyes, his mind racing as he recounts the sequence of events that led to this predicament. While he is relieved they managed to dress themselves, the reality of sharing a room with both Risty and Nanace makes sleep feel like an impossible prospect. Just as he begins to settle into the silence, a soft voice drifts from the bed, asking if he is still awake. He can only offer a quiet, weary confirmation. He listens as she offers a soft apology for her conduct after their evening meal. She admits her memory of the events is hazy, yet she carries a lingering sense that something positive occurred. He simply nods, attributing the lapse to the exhaustion they all shared. As the silence returns, she shifts on the edge of her bed, pulling her knees close. Her voice drops to a whisper as she confesses there is a truth she has yet to share with him. Looking up with a vulnerable gaze, she asks if he had already realized that neither she nor Platina had revealed their true names. He meets her eyes steadily, admitting that their refined mannerisms made it quite obvious. In his view, they hadn't been particularly skilled at maintaining the deception. This revelation surprises her, and she marvels at his perception, noting that no one else in the city had seen through their facade. Turning the conversation, she asks what drove him to take up the life of an adventurer. The room falls quiet again as she sits alone in the dim light, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. She explains that while a desire for strength was part of her motivation, it wasn't the sole reason for her journey. Her mind drifts to the vast world beyond, driven by a deep-seated need to witness the wonders of the land with her own eyes rather than through the stories of others. She listens quietly as he questions the motives that brought her and Platina to this particular city. Explaining their bond, she describes Platina as her closest friend, admitting that the other woman only adopted the title of Paladin to protect and support her, even if saying so might cause a bit of friction between them. This revelation leads him to a sudden realization about Platina's true nature. As a member of the Royal Order, her duty is to serve those of noble birth, which suggests a much higher status for the companion sitting before him. Sensing the weight of the moment, she prepares to disclose her own true profession, her voice soft as she addresses him by name. He gently cuts her off, insisting that to him, she is simply the party's skilled swordsman and primary attacker, noting her talent for cooking as well. She adds with a small smile that her culinary skills were something she pursued independently of any formal training. Expressing a deep sense of gratitude, he tells her how much he appreciates them teaming up with someone who struggles with basic magic, affirming that if she wishes to remain an adventurer, he is entirely on her side. He goes further, declaring that even if her true identity were that of a princess, his opinion of her would remain unchanged, a statement that leaves her momentarily stunned. Overwhelmed by his sincerity, she suddenly dives under the covers, hiding her face as the weight of his words sinks in. She whispers a soft thank you from beneath the safety of her blankets, expressing a quiet relief at finally being able to speak her truth. As she settles into the bed, the weight of their conversation lingers in the still air of the room. Mado stands by her side for a moment, listening as she shares her burgeoning desire to grow stronger and witness the vast world with her own eyes. Her words resonate deeply with him, sparking a memory of his own journey. He realizes that it was that very same yearning for discovery that drove him to leave his home and begin his travels. He stepped into the sun-drenched room, finding Risti already busy at the table. She greeted him warmly, her usual energetic self, even in the early morning as she prepared for the day ahead. Feeling a pang of guilt, he apologized for leaving the preparations to her alone, offering his help for anything else. She simply smiled, her eyes crinkling as she explained that he had been sleeping so peacefully she hadn't the heart to wake him. Earlier, she had moved through the shared sleeping quarters, gently rousing Nanes and the others for the morning meal. He had watched from the doorway, appreciative of the quiet domesticity that had settled over their group after their recent trials. As they settled in, he mentioned that he had some private matters to attend to today. He requested that she head to the guild ahead of him once breakfast was finished, a task she accepted with a curious but understanding nod. Outside, the town was beginning to stir, the sturdy timber and stone of the inn standing firm against the morning light. The streets were still relatively quiet, but the day's business was already beginning for some in the shadows. Moving through the shadows of the alleyways, the figure known as Crow adjusted her hood, her mind focused on the task at hand. She reflected on her physical condition, noting that despite her recent activities, her instincts as a thief remained sharp as she approached her destination. She was greeted by Risti, who had been waiting for her. The two discussed the aftermath of the recent major request, with Crow admitting it had become more of an ordeal than anticipated, though she had ultimately succeeded in her objective. Observing that the thief's prowess remained undiminished, the woman slid a document across the table. It was a formal record of the mission's completion, a necessary step in their ongoing journey through the kingdom. She leans forward, placing the heavy documents on the table between them. Crow remained silent, her eyes fixed on the papers that hold the key to their next objective. Pointing to a specific mark, she identifies it as the signature of EIK. She clarifies that the request for a secret investigation came directly from Gazelle and EIK, as evidenced by the official seal of the staff. The map reveals their destination, the royal capital of Beeld. It is the central seat of power for the Beeld kingdom, dominating the western reaches of the continent. Crow questions the involvement of the Schweik family, the lords of that region, wondering why the request originated from Beeld. She explains that the Schweik family has been marginalized by the central government. This political isolation means they are no longer privy to information from the high nobility, leaving them in the dark. This name triggers a memory for Crow of a man named Brand Schweik. She realizes he was likely a direct descendant or close relative of the very lords who issued the request. Confirming the nature of the mission, she describes it as a covert operation. The situation is dire, as the royal capital has been plagued by the presence of demons for the past 2 months. The source of the trouble seems to be a group operating out of a crumbling, ancient tower. They are reportedly scouring the ruins, searching for something hidden within the wasteland. Inju listens intently as Risti explains the nature of the demons. They are anomalies, existing far beyond the standard hierarchy of power and the rules that govern common monsters. Because the king's own military was powerless against this demonic threat, the danger persists, casting a long shadow over the realm as the monsters remain a constant, looming presence. In response to this crisis, a secret royal decree was issued. The one who slays the demons shall be granted the princess's hand in marriage, a prize meant to entice the strongest warriors. This revelation leads Mado to a sharp realization. The Schweik family isn't just hunting monsters. They're seeking a path to the throne and the right of succession through this union. While the Thieves' Guild usually avoids the messy power struggles of the nobility, Risti felt it was important for Mado to understand the true political stakes of the mission they are undertaking. Her gaze then shifts to Platina, considering the woman's true identity as a member of the royal order and the noble lineage that likely accompanies such a prestigious and secretive title. The conversation turns to the princess herself, Noyeris Tia Bielnard, whose presence as an adventurer in a city of vice is a startling and ironic contradiction to her royal status. When Mado questions the morality of such forced political marriages, Risti admits it is a common burden for the highborn, though her expression suggests there is more to the story than she is letting on. He listens as Risti poses a pointed question, asking for his honest impression of Princess Noyeris after having seen her. He observes her vibrant, carefree smiles, which now seem like a sharp contrast to the heavy political weight she is discussing. Contemplating his next move, The young man realizes that while he shouldn't interfere too deeply, he wants to ensure the princess has the freedom to choose her own path. With a sudden surge of resolve, he turns away, thanking Risty for the information and announcing his departure to find Sister Mabel. As he prepares to leave, she places a supportive hand on his shoulder, expressing her high expectations for him, which he acknowledges with a quiet grunt. While they speak, the weight of destiny is recalled. For the princess, her role was decided the moment she was born, a predetermined fate in a world where she must eventually wed someone capable of sustaining the realm. Surrounding her in the palace, a group of stern educators and attendants stand before the sovereign, emphasizing that their entire purpose is to mold her for this inevitable duty. Standing alone, she begins to speak, her voice carrying the quiet burden of a life lived for others. She approaches her attendant with a startling request, asking to be taught the arts of combat for her own protection. The request catches the other woman off guard, prompting a moment of stunned silence as she processes the princess's sudden desire for martial training. This led to grueling sessions in the courtyard, where the princess struggled to find her footing against the wooden training dummies. Despite the exhaustion that often left her collapsed on the stone floor, her resolve to learn never wavered, even when her body reached its limit. During a brief respite from their training, the conversation shifts to the growing threat beyond their borders, as the attendant mentions the call for adventurers to slay the demon dragon. The princess observes that while the beast's shadow has not yet fallen upon their kingdom, the world is changing rapidly around them. Her mind wanders to those who live outside the rigid structures of the court, adventurers who make their own way and face monsters by choice. To her, their lives represent a freedom entirely alien to the predetermined path she has walked since birth, a life where one's vocation is not decided by bloodline. Looking out toward the horizon from the palace balcony, she wonders if she could ever find a version of herself that isn't defined by her royal title. The thought of a life defined by her own choices, rather than the expectations of the crown, begins to take firm root in her heart. However, the harsh reality of her position is soon reinforced by the whispers of the court attendants nearby. They speak of the demon dragon's latest conquest and the king's final decree. The hand of the princess will be granted in marriage to whichever hero manages to subjugate the beast. Overhearing this, she feels the walls of her gilded cage closing in, her hand tightening into a fist as the weight of her father's decision sinks in. The realization hits her with cold clarity. There is no more time to wait, and she must act before her fate is sealed by another's hand. Clad in a traveling cloak, she prepares to take a desperate gamble, turning to her loyal companion for support. The knight, known as the Silver Flash, pledges her shield and her life to protect the princess as they prepare to step into the unknown together. She stands before her loyal knight, who kneels in a solemn vow of eternal service, promising to follow her wherever she may go, regardless of the destination. Having successfully slipped past the palace gates, the two women pull their hoods low, blending into the crowd as they leave their former lives behind and step into the unknown. As they walk, the knight, now going by the name Risty, reveals a hidden treasure, the Ring of the Hermit, a gift from her mother. Her companion worries that using such a relic for their escape might draw unwanted attention if they are discovered. This journey reminds them of how their paths first crossed with a certain group of adventurers, leading to an unexpected encounter that changed the course of their mission. Her thoughts drift to the young man they met, a thief named Mado. Despite being only level 1, he possessed an air of someone who had seen the entire world, a strength that surpassed anyone she had ever known. Meanwhile, the other members of the group discuss their next steps, eager to find a reputable guild where they can finally start earning their keep and gaining the experience they so desperately need as adventurers. As they stroll through the bustling town square, the conversation turns to Mado's mysterious private affairs, with one of them jokingly wondering if he's off meeting a secret lover, though he never seemed the type. They recall how popular he seemed to be with others they'd met, like Ulu and Ali, leaving them to ponder the true nature of the man who leads them. They push through the heavy doors of the guild hall, the bustling noise of the city fading behind them as they step into the grand interior. Inside, the atmosphere is thick with tension as they overhear whispers of a demonic threat. The realization that the demon race has reached the outskirts of the capital sends a chill through the room. Their conversation is interrupted by a familiar voice as Brand Schweik approaches, greeting Risty with a confident wave while the others look on in surprise. He quickly turns the topic to the dire news, reporting that a checkpoint in the Western District has been overrun and the fortress there has fallen to the demonic invaders. The gravity of the situation is clear. The enemy, though only level 5, has forced the retreat of the local defense forces, necessitating a call for high-ranking adventurers to step in. A seasoned warrior nearby scoffs at the young knight's ambition, warning him that hunting demons is no ordinary quest and that he is leading his team to certain death. The young knight remains undeterred, asserting that his party possesses strength far beyond that of the standard city guard, and that there is no need for such pessimistic concern. With a self-assured smirk, he adds that his personal victory over the demon race carries a significance far greater than anyone else's could ever hope to achieve. He continues his boast, declaring that he intends to have everything he desires. Risty, the woman with the large ribbon, looks at him with confusion, questioning the true meaning behind his words. Leaning in close enough to invade her personal space, the knight whispers a demeaning offer, suggesting that he could even make her his concubine. She recoils slightly, her expression one of stunned disbelief at his audacity. This insult does not go unnoticed by her companions. The holy knight grits her teeth in a silent rage, while the witch stares with cold fury. The knight's voice trembles with indignation as she begins to lash out at the man's disrespect. He merely chuckles at their anger, dismissively suggesting that they aren't cut out for the life of an adventurer and should seek other types of employment instead. Risty places a steadying hand on her friends, urging them not to be baited by his provocations and insisting that she is unharmed by his words. With a final, mocking laugh, the armored man turns his back on them and begins to depart. The guild official nearby bows deeply, offering a sincere apology for the nobleman's boorish behavior, while the holy knight continues to glare at his retreating form. The heavy doors of the guild hall swing shut behind him as he makes his exit, leaving a tense silence in his wake. Once he is gone, the holy knight softens, thanking Risty for standing up for their collective pride. The witch, however, remains skeptical, wondering aloud if all of his previous attempts to recruit them were merely a front for his predatory intentions. Despite the unpleasant encounter, Risty looks toward the future with renewed resolve, noting that while she wished for more time, they cannot afford to wait. Her companions rally behind her, their spirits lifted as they prepare to head out on their mission as newly promoted blue card adventurers. She and her companions discuss their next move, confident in their new status. Risty mentions they have a trump card ready, her expression full of a newfound resolve that masks any lingering frustration from their earlier encounter. Their conversation is cut short by a sharp rapping at the door. The three women turn in unison, wondering who could be seeking them out at such an hour. He steps into the room, his gaze sweeping over the trio. Noticing the heavy atmosphere, he remarks that they all look as if they are preparing for a funeral, his casual tone a stark contrast to their grim expressions. In response to his arrival, they quickly brief him on the dire news that has reached the guild. A demon force has seized the western fort, placing the nearby entertainment city in immediate peril, a crisis that demands their urgent attention. He processes the gravity of the situation before offering a reassuring wink. Since a subjugation request has been issued, he declares his intent to handle the task, promising the group that he will be the one to protect them all. She watches him with a mixture of surprise and relief, her eyes softening as his confidence bolsters her own spirit. Despite the looming threat of the demon race, his presence provides a sense of security she hadn't realized she needed. Under the vast, star-dusted sky, the silhouette of the distant castle stands as a silent witness to the gathering storm. The path ahead is clear. This adventure is one they must face together, with every eye fixed on the challenges that await. The guild officials offer a somber apology, their faces etched with concern as they acknowledge the peril they've thrust upon such young shoulders. They offer a final, heartfelt wish for a safe return. Outside the heavy stone fortifications, the group of four stands ready. Soldiers patrol the ramparts above as the adventurers prepare to depart into the unknown. Turning to the energetic warrior beside him, the young man asks for permission to take the lead on this leg of the journey. She offers a bright, trusting smile, affirming her complete confidence in his guidance. Their companions, the stoic knight and the young mage, look on with curiosity. They question whether the plan is still to rendezvous with the vanguard led by Bran. As they begin their trek across the vast, desolate expanse, he clarifies that they will not be following the others. He explains that his familiarity with the local geography offers them a different path. He details a strategic shortcut through the dense forest, bypassing the long, winding main road that leads west from the city. He has already verified with a local contact that this hidden trail remains viable for their passage. Beyond the tactical advantage, he expresses a sense of urgency, citing guild reports of potential survivors in the area. He also voices a lingering doubt regarding Bran's recent behavior, a sentiment that prompts the group to quicken their pace. Deep in thought, he reflects on the royal decree promising the princess's hand to whoever slays the demon threat. He realizes that if their party achieves the feat first, they can effectively dismantle that problematic proclamation. He had just finished explaining the plan, leaving the knight to murmur his name in quiet contemplation, her expression a mix of uncertainty and dawning respect. As they prepare to depart, the young witch from the trio offered a small vial, explaining that she had crafted an insect repellent from Mulan fruit, a practical necessity for the dense forest trek ahead. After she handed over the supplies, the group finalized their gear, and he declared that they were ready to move out, leading the diverse band of allies toward their destination. Meanwhile, miles away, the rhythmic clopping of hooves echoed through the woods as a heavy carriage made its way along a more established path. Inside the cabin, the young commander questioned his advisor on their proximity to the demon territory, learning they were expected to arrive by midday. He tightened his grip, sensing the weight of the opportunity before him. He spoke bitterly of the royal family and the capital's nobility, who had long treated his house with disdain, and noted that even his own kin were watching his every move with skeptical eyes. His ambition burned bright as he realized that by vanquishing the demon threat, he would force the elite to acknowledge his worth and finally secure the status he so desperately craved. When his advisor cautioned that their open approach might invite magical ambushes, he dismissed the concern with a sharp command, arguing that it would only serve to draw the enemy out as they pressed forward without delay. He is addressed by his advisor, who calls out to him with a sense of duty and quiet urgency as they travel. In response, the young knight clenches his arms, his expression tight with the weight of his mission. Beside him, a maiden named Dorothea stands ready, her presence a reminder that even the household staff are prepared to serve as his guard. He accepts the gravity of the situation, his gaze hardening as he resolves to give everything he has to the coming struggle, knowing there is no turning back. His confidence is bolstered by the formidable warriors in his company, veterans who once crossed the seas and earn a reputation for being unmatched in the distant entertainment city. The advisor watches him with a proud, steady look, certain that with such a team, even the demon race can be overcome. Suddenly, the peace is shattered as massive, dark-furred beasts lunge from the brush toward the moving carriage. Without a moment's hesitation, the advisor and the maid leap from the vehicle to intercept the threat. The advisor meets a beast with a crushing blow, while the female warrior's blade flashes in a deadly arc. Seeing his companions engaged, the young knight draws his own weapon, refusing to stay sidelined. Surrounded by the snarling pack, he declares that they will not be delayed in such a place, even as a pair of predatory eyes watches from the darkness. Far from the main road, the young thief leads his companions through the dense woods until they reach the precipice of a jagged cliff. From this height, the party, consisting of the energetic knight with the large ribbon, the stoic witch, and their companion, gazes out over the rugged terrain to assess their progress. As they navigate the treacherous rocky path, the ribbon-haired knight marvels at his uncanny sense of direction, jokingly asking if he is some sort of mountain deity reborn. He offers a cryptic smile in response, suggesting that her guess might not be entirely far from the truth. Their careful trek eventually brings them to a vantage point overlooking a formidable stone fortress nestled in a valley below. They have successfully circled around to the rear of the structure, where several dark, lupin shapes can be seen prowling the perimeter. He narrows his eyes, focusing on one of the creatures patrolling the grounds. It becomes clear to him that these are no ordinary wild animals. Their unnatural aura and disciplined movements mark them as familiars bound to the demon race. This realization brings to mind the fact that certain high-ranking demons possess bestial traits, allowing them to command such creatures as loyal subordinates. If these wolves are acting as sentries, their master must be overseeing the fortress from within. Turning back to his companions, he listens as the ribbon-haired knight whispers a question about the possibility of stealthy infiltration. He warns that any significant noise would surely alert the garrison, then instructs the women to stay back and wait for his signal while he handles the scouts. Without another word, he launches himself from the cliff's edge, descending like a silent predator upon an unsuspecting wolf below. The beast catches a scent and turns with a snarl, but it is far too late to react to the shadow falling from above. He connects with a devastating, precise strike that silences the creature instantly. The impact is swift and controlled, ensuring the familiar is neutralized before it can let out a single howl of alarm to the rest of the pack. He swiftly finishes the job, his hands gripping the beast's snout and neck with practiced precision. With a sharp twist, the struggle ends, and the creature goes limp beneath him. Watching from the safety of the foliage, the three companions can hardly contain their amazement. Their eyes widen as they witness the efficiency of the silent takedown. Realizing the caliber of the man, they are following. Leaving the fallen sentry behind, the agile warrior sprints across the open ground toward a side entrance of the fortress. Every second counts before another patrol discovers the body. Upon reaching the heavy door, he extends a hand, activating a specialized lock-picking skill. A faint click echoes as the mechanism yields, and he mutters a brief word of thanks that the door relied on a magical seal he could bypass. With the way clear, he beckons the others forward. The trio emerges from their hiding spot, moving quickly but cautiously across the courtyard to join him at the threshold. As they slip inside the cold stone walls, he drops to one knee, raising a hand to signal for absolute silence. The others follow suit, their breath held as they adjust to the dim light of the interior. He inches toward the edge of a corridor, peering around the corner with focused intensity. A sudden, heavy thud from further inside the building catches his attention, signaling that they are no longer alone. Emerging from the shadows ahead, a pair of hulking, dog-headed guards patrol the hallway. One carries a massive axe over his shoulder, while the other grips a heavy chain, their low growls vibrating in the narrow space. They loom over their captives, the heavy rattle of chains echoing through the damp stone room. One of the prisoners, a man with a weathered face, shouts for the beasts to stop their torment, desperately pleading for them to take him instead of the others. Watching from the shadows of the doorway, the group quickly assesses the situation. Mado notes the presence of 2 guards and whispers to Platina that they must act immediately to prevent further harm to the innocent workers. He steps into the light, his voice cutting through the tension as he taunts the dog-headed creatures, calling them mere strays. With a focused glare, he activates a substitution technique, drawing their undivided attention toward himself. Before the beast can react, he becomes a blur of motion, lunging forward with lethal precision. The guards, caught off guard by a sudden burst of speed, can only watch as the distance between them vanishes in an instant. The strike is swift and decisive, sending the monsters crashing to the floor as the prisoners cower in the background. The threat is neutralized in a matter of heartbeats, leaving the room suddenly, eerily quiet. As the dust settles, the adventurers rush to the side of the trembling captives. Nanace offers a restorative potion, urging them to drink, while the prisoners stammer out their gratitude, still reeling from the shock of their near-death experience and mentioning the injuries they took for their comrades. She explains that they have come on behalf of the Adventurers Guild to purge the fortress of its demonic infestation. The lead prisoner, clutching his arm, looks up in disbelief, struggling to process that help has finally arrived. He remains stoic despite the prisoners' skepticism regarding their youthful appearance. Ignoring their doubts, he demands to know the exact number of demons remaining in the facility, promising that his actions will serve as all the proof they need. He listens intently as the freed prisoners provide crucial intelligence. They report seeing 2 powerful demons and a swarm of subordinates, adding that many of their comrades are still held captive elsewhere in the facility. Because of this information, the group learns that the demons have taken hostages and were last seen heading toward the main gate. The prisoner's voice trembles as he confirms the direction of the threat. In response, the team gathers around a tactical layout of the fortress. They decide to systematically eliminate the demons outside to avoid detection before moving inward to clear the remaining forces. The plan involves securing the survivors in a fortified room to keep them safe during the coming skirmish. As the strategy solidifies, the hooded automaton explains a vital piece of lore. Defeating the primary demon will cause its summoned minions to vanish instantly. Her companions are impressed by this knowledge, whispering about the young man's reputation as a sage. With the plan set, the lead prisoner places his trust in them, pleading for their success. The group wastes no time, ascending the stone stairs with quiet determination to begin their infiltration. Moments later, they discover a room where a woman is frantically checking a map, while another survivor cringes in terror beneath a bed. The atmosphere is thick with the desperation of those living under the demon's shadow. Meanwhile, in a nearby corridor, a lone kobold guard pauses, its canine ears twitching at a faint sound. It stands alert, sensing an intruder in the silence of the stone halls. Before it can bark a warning, the young warrior strikes from the shadows. He wraps a powerful arm around the creature's throat, cutting off its breath and ensuring the element of surprise remains theirs. He looks back at his companions, who are cheering him on with enthusiastic waves and words of encouragement. Despite their support, he asks them to stop doing that every time, clearly finding the constant praise a bit much while they are in the middle of a dangerous mission. Turning his attention back to the task, he locates the hidden passage he had heard about, a vertical shaft with a rope ladder that should allow them to bypass the demon guards. As he prepares to lead the way, the others remark on how indispensable he has become to the party, noting that his skills as a thief are exactly what they need to navigate this fortress successfully. He listens as Nanace raises a practical concern, asking Platina if her bulky chest armor might cause issues while climbing the narrow ladder, given the tight space. He ascends first to scout the area above, and once he gives the signal that the coast is clear, Platina begins her climb. The warrior struggles as she reaches the top, grunting with effort as she finds the opening far tighter than expected. She becomes visibly stuck in the narrow hatch, and when the others question her, she defensively insists that it is her well-trained muscles causing the obstruction, rather than her chest size. She is wedged tight, her legs kicking fruitlessly as she struggles to free herself from the narrow gap. The witch nearby whispers urgently, warning that they don't have time for this and that someone might discover them at any moment. She groans in discomfort as he reaches out to grab her, pulling with all his might to dislodge her from the tight squeeze. Her face contorts as the friction of the stone walls resists her movement, making every inch of progress a painful struggle. With a sudden pop, she finally breaks free, tumbling forward into the open space. Flustered and embarrassed, she immediately rounds on him, shouting about his inappropriate grip, while the others frantically try to hush her before her outbursts alert the entire floor. She is quickly hushed by the others as the group continues their stealthy advance through the dimly lit stone corridors. While he adjusts his bandages and advises caution, he suggests they maintain a steady pace and avoid unnecessary risks as they delve deeper into the enemy's stronghold. They reach a heavy door and peer cautiously through the crack, their breaths held in anticipation of what lies beyond. Their breath hitches as they peer inside, where a monstrous werewolf-like creature has pinned a victim against the wall, its fangs sunk deep into their neck. It isn't just feeding on flesh, it's draining the very mana from the poor soul's body, leaving them a withered husk. The beast stands tall, its presence overwhelming as it senses the intruder's fear. It mocks the weakness of the humans within these walls, noting that even the guards were no challenge, while the group watches on in silent horror, realizing they have encountered an unexpectedly powerful foe.